across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome to the show. It is time for Drive, and I'm here to keep you company through till 7 o'clock today, whatever you're doing. I hope you're being safe. If you are behind the wheel, don't get too distracted. It can be pretty treacherous out there. It's dark, it's slippery, and don't forget the potholes, and especially don't forget those 20-mile-per-hour zones, because we want you to keep your licence. OK, right, we've got a lot going on in this programme. Very newsy week, isn't it? It's news ahoy. And we're going to have some excellent guests, actually, to basically guide us through the lot of it. There's a lot of things that make you want to pull your hair out, quite frankly, which is exactly how we need to feel just before Christmas, isn't it? But to save you from doing that, I'm going to give you an opportunity, right? The best way to de-stress is to talk to a friend. You know, share your thoughts and feelings with a relative, perhaps. Or call 03444991000, because this is free therapy right here at Talk. I'm going to be your agony auntie Alex for you. It's your normal network rate, so it doesn't even cost you anything, really, does it? I mean, what have you got to lose? I'm thinking of Andrew from the train right now. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. Again, it's your normal messaging rate. And you've probably got it in some sort of included package, don't you? If you're going to do a text, you have to write the word talk before you type out your message. And if you want to WhatsApp me, because you're a little bit more down with the kids, and even leave me a voice note on WhatsApp, it is 03444991000. Right, let's get on with getting on, because I'm joined by my favourite Babba-in-Chief. Any regular listener knows who it is. The greatest, the best Gloucesterian, just after me. It's Mr. James Price. Hi, James.
I'm always happy to come in second place to you, Alex. No problem at all. Good to be with you.
I feel like you can be like, you know, head boy of Gloucester, and I'll be head girl. That works. OK, now let us talk about the most unsurprising story in the papers today, which is the fact that the Home Office has absolutely no idea how many asylum seekers have gone missing, which means that every single time we do, oh, this is how many people on the small boats, this is how many people are in the backlog, this is how many asylum seekers we've got in the UK, it's bunkum, it's nonsense, it's tip of the iceberg. You may as well just get a random number generator out, or nick, you know, the lottery machine, get a tombola, pull out some random numbers and go, that's how many, because we don't know.
Is anybody surprised? Really? Is anyone shocked that the Home Office as a building isn't fit for purpose in any way, shape or form? The wild thing is that we can't keep people from getting into the country. We also can't get people out of the country. So our borders don't work really in either way, shape or form. We don't have any of the numbers at all. Is anyone surprised? Are we not just so fed up with this now? Every day we're seeing more, I was going to say a rude word there, more mistakes made by this government, made by a civil service that doesn't care. And bear in mind, the Home Office here is an organisation that has had civil servants try and go on strike. It's had people say, well, I just don't believe in what this government is doing. Well, tough. You're paid to go and do it. If you don't like it, quit. And so this is a kind of open insurrection you've had in that building for a long time, trying to get rid of democratically elected Home Secretaries. And now you have at least got someone in the form of Shabana Mahmood who at least sort of plays to the crowd that she's trying to do something about it. And it turns out it's going to be even more difficult because of their incompetence and the fact they just don't
What I love is you get new people in. We had it in the Conservatives as well, didn't we? You get a new Home Secretary, they talk tough, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And after all their promises, they're inside the system. And because they won't do what actually needs to be done, they realise that all their other plans, B's, C's, D's, E's, Z's, don't work. They all fall apart. And it's like, we've had 15 years of this. Why don't we just leave the ECHR, turn some boats around, you know, jobs are good and problem solved. It'd be brilliant. But no, those are the sacred cows. Can't be leaving that ECHR, just got to meddle with it at the sides, just got to try and twist the arms of the other European signatories, who, can I just say, most of whom don't even follow the ECHR anyway. No, they put a little bit of Gallic interpretation on it. We think that it means that we should actually send all these migrants back to Tunisia from whence they came, think the French. Oh, good. Good on you. Us, however, you know, that Anglo-Saxon form of law, we're like, well, that letter, that comma's there, we better let him stay, hadn't we? I mean, why can't they just read the runes, do what we know works? We've seen it work in Australia. We're seeing it work in Greece. They've got the taste for turning the odd boat around now and then. Just get on with it. Do it.
It's a great point. And I think there's two really interesting things here. You can use the case study of Robert Jenrick, who was the Conservative Home Office minister who resigned because he couldn't get little Rishi Sunak to agree with him that he needed to do a lot more than was currently being done. And good on Robert Jenrick. He resigned. He got a lot of opprobrium and hate from some of his colleagues, and certainly from little Rishi Sunak about this. But he said what we are doing in the government's bills at the moment is not going to be sufficient to secure our borders. I have tried until I'm blue in the face to explain this to the Prime Minister and his team. They don't care, and therefore I quit. Good on him for doing that. I wish more people would have the stones to do that, frankly. And the other point you make, Alex, is an excellent one, which is that for all of the faults of our civil service, and you know, I'm probably first amongst equals in terms of going around trying to criticize it, at the very least, when you have something written as a law, it's probably a good idea either to get rid of that law if you don't intend to abide by it, or else, what does they say in Shakespeare, the law is an ass, or to abide by the law. You have a different example of this on the continent, where they all see that the ECHR stuff, and by the way, loads of European Union rules, are complete nonsense. And as you say, they give it the old French shrug and they ignore it. Well, that's better for them because they can deport nasty, wrong and criminals and all the rest of it. We can't do that, but we shouldn't be in a situation where we're just encouraging people to ignore.
Did you know as well? So I found this out yesterday, right? I had a very interesting lunch with Monsieur Jordan Bardella, who is going to be the next president of France, without a doubt. He's the president of Rassemblement National, and because the French have done a court case which is basically probably going to stop Marine Le Pen from being able to stand for presidential election, he's going to be the geezer. 30 years old, very impressive character. And we were discussing this, and he said, actually, because of the French Constitution, right, nothing can top the French Constitution, so the ECHR actually comes below the law of the land in France. I didn't know that. Good for them, I say.
Well, absolutely right. And that should be the case here. Parliament is supposed to be sovereign. That has been our glorious settlement, our constitutional settlement, since the Glorious Revolution, all the way back in 1688. I wasn't actually there myself, but I'm reliably so informed.
Well, you're not.
You have a situation where if Parliament passes a law, it's just happened. We don't have checks and balances the way that you've got in the United States, because we didn't fib about George III the way that they did, and we should be able to just do stuff. But the fact is, you now have this enormous coterie, as I mentioned, of civil servants getting in the way of these things. And by the way, what you have is, from Tony Blair's day in particular, they would write British laws saying, we will now be subservient to these foreign courts and foreign laws. So the Human Rights Act of 1998, a particular example, sounds lovely, doesn't it? We all love a bit of human rights. That sounds so nice and cuddly and decent.
When you dig below this,
stops us from being able to actually enforce proper British rights.
He don't like human rights either, Starmer, as much as he was a human rights lawyer and it, lined his pockets quite comfortably, and he's got to side with a load of wrong-uns. He doesn't seem to care too much about human rights, because he's written in The Guardian about going over to Europe to try and persuade other European leaders to urgently update the European Convention on Human Rights, because what he actually says is, we got to get this thing sorted. Do you know why? Do you know why we got to get it sorted? Don't worry about the organ harvesting, the sex trafficking, the lives lost at sea, the terrorist organisations making a packet of money. It could have just continued, at quite a pace, regardless of all those horrible dehumanising, monstrous, demonic acts that are part of the, basically, the industrial complex that is illegal immigration. No, the only reason he wants to do it is to confront the rise of right-wing parties. The only reason, politically, that man might grow a spine is because, actually, he's licked his finger, put it in the breeze and gone, do you know what? We're probably not going to get re-elected.
Yeah, absolutely wild, isn't it? And it shows, by the way, that opposition can work. People going and calling into programs like this one and expressing their opinions. Eventually, even a government as rancid and evil as Starmer's already is, has to bow to that kind of public pressure, even if it's just, as you say, in their own self-interest. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, No Country for Old Men.
Oh, I love that film.
Right, Javier Bardem has the absolutely terrible haircut, and he goes around bumping people off. Great film. But there's a bit where he traps this guy, he's going to kill him, and it's all a bit grim. And he says, look, if your rules led you to this point, what use were those rules? And I can't help but feel that's exactly the same about the ECHR.
The analysis for me is basically there's a massive fire in the middle of the sitting room, and everyone's there. Someone gets out a water pistol. That hasn't worked. Someone else gets out the little blanket for cooking fat fires. That doesn't work. Someone gets one of those powder extinguishers. No, that doesn't work. And everyone else is going, oh my gosh, when are you going to regard this as an emergency and call the fire service? Basically, when everything's burnt down. That's basically this government's approach to the crisis that is mass illegal immigration.
Starmer would probably make the fire the Home Secretary.
Yeah, exactly. You know, Starmer's there with the bellows at the side going, come on, get bigger, woohoo! Let's talk now about, I mean, look, you have to feel a bit sorry for Starmer with regards to... Well,
I know it's not panto season, but only
you don't. No, you don't. You're right. You don't at all, do you? But he's stuck with that Rachel Reeves, isn't he? It's a bit awkward. You can't get rid of her now. She's basically shackled to him. He's like, if she goes, I go. And she's like, oh, you know that budget that everyone hates? The backbenchers, they weren't satisfied. The whole country hated because you tried to satisfy the backbenchers. Basically, it's a dumpster fire in politics. We decided all of it together, she says. It's me and him, like Tweedledee and Tweedledum, thick as thieves, two peas in a pod. He must be thinking, oh, my goodness. Thanks, Rach.
You're right. I do actually, for the first time, feel a little bit sorry for him. I stand corrected. No, this is true. And this is what I think we talked about this just before the budget came out, of why it was that Starmer was standing foursquare next to Rachel Reeves. You think this is terrible politics. If it goes well, you say, well, I'm the Prime Minister. I told her to do this anyway. If it goes badly, you could have distanced yourself a bit from it, given that she has lied and lied and lied to the public, to businesses, to the media, to the people that she pretended that she beat in that chess tournament, to anybody who's ever read her CV, and so on and so on. But you know, why shackle yourself to this? Get all the tax rises in and then go, oh yeah, she messed up, and get rid of her. But instead, she's managed to play one final smart move, as you say, and lock them in together, because the pair of them may go down. Which, by the way, if we do lose one, or God forbid both of them, can you imagine the kind of Charlies who are going to come in and take their place?
Oh, I know. Well,
as bad as they are, it could get worse.
It's that time of year when you turn on the television, everything's advertising cough mixtures and nasal sprays for congestion. So in order to sort of set the playing field for some good sort of merchandising of products for sinuses, let's have a little listen to Ms. Reeves, shall we?
Prime Minister and I met 2-3 times a week during the budget process. That is not always the case between Chancellors and Prime Ministers, I recognise that, but there is a very close partnership between myself and the Prime Minister, and so we took him through all of these all of the numbers and all of the options, and we decided it together as a team, because that is what the Prime Minister and I am.
It reminds me of that thing in The Apprentice, you know, when they have to do a group task and they absolutely foul it up, and there's always somebody who's an absolute idiot who just can't get anything right. It's like, no, we should set the price at £5 million, and yeah, Alan Sugar's going to love that. And then they all get like called back into the drawing room and the boardroom, and Alan Sugar's like, right, which idiot decided the price should be £5 million? And they're like, well, we all did, actually. It was a group decision, wasn't it? We all got around and said, I know, let's set the... I said... and they're also going, literally like that.
I mean, there are just no words. She's been an MP for quite a while, right? She knows she's got to sit in front of this select committee at some point, all the way through that budget process, and justify some of the mad stuff that she's come up with, some of the numbers that she's invented, some of the fibs. And the worst bit for me is that, you know, aside from the fact that, you know, rather than taking any accountability and standing up for her own budget, she just used the whole opportunity to say, oh, the Tories, lazily like that, is that she's gone and said, yeah, you know, there were some leaks, by the way, and that is bang out of order. Like, you are the person who has been authorising all of those.
You were the leak.
And you're lying again, because Alex, you will know this, and colleagues of yours at Talk and other colleagues across the news lobby will all have been given briefings by this. And I've heard some journalists say they're denying it, but I've got the texts, here you go, showing that they leaked to us. So she's still lying. It's just pathological at this point.
It is totally pathological. Before I let you go, young James, did you read today that because I mentioned him earlier, Monsieur Bardella has actually turned around and said to the Brits, do you know what? If I become president of France, fair play, I'll let you turn around some boats that'll probably stop the crisis. It's like, get in there! Yes, son.
Well, yeah, exactly. 1,000 years of foreign policy. If in doubt, blame the French. Let's forget about it. Let's call the whole thing off. L'entente cordiale number 2. And let's be friends again. I think it was some French generals just in around 1945 1940, when it looked like Hitler was about to invade and it was all going to get very nasty, that the French suggested that the French Republic and the British Empire united to form one country, which would have helped with these cross-border crossings in some way, shape or form. And it was de Gaulle who got rid of it. De Gaulle has been a thorn in Britain's side, despite us, saving them from fascism and Nazis and all the rest. But look, I do think that with all the stuff around Brexit and how unpleasant it's all got because there are a bunch of unelected bureaucrats in Brussels trying to tell us how to run our lives, we on the right shouldn't fall into the trap of just being endlessly anti-European. It's a wonderful continent. It's created alongside Britain's civilization. You've had spent time there. It's a wonderful place. And if we can work together with consenting elected governments to fix problems, then formidable, as far as I'm concerned.
Incroyable. I'm very much hoping that lovely Mr. Bardella does actually become the next president of France. He's a youngster, but my gosh, he is impressive. I might have a little bit of a political crush on that man. James, thank you ever so much. Love you to bits. I'll see you soon, my babs. OK, we're going to take a short break now. Look, someone's message. John from Wallington says, the Jordan Bardella comments on immigration is the best news I've heard for ages. I know, he's just got to get that man in. Come on, the French. Anyway, going to take a short break now, but if you want to throw in your 2-bit, or maybe 200, it's 03444991000. You can also WhatsApp me on that number or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. You know I love a good voice note. The number to text is 87222. Write the word talk before you type out your message. That way it knows where to come, because if you don't, it could end up anywhere. You can also give me a phone call, 03444991000. The brilliant Kieran is standing by to take down your name and what you want to say. And when the moment is opportune, he'll give you a call back and we'll get you on air. OK, right, go put the kettle on or pour a 3-fingered gin and tonic. Crack open your favourite tinny, and I'll see you on the other side of these ads.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile. and on your side. This is Talk.
Do you know what? Donald Trump is a busy old boy, isn't he? He's popping up all the time, making his comments, trying to forge peace treaties, truces, throwing his opinions around like giant Christmas presents. But that's how I started to think of them, actually. It's lovely. Every time Trump says something, what is it now? Come on, come on. This is what he had to say about Sadiq Khan.
Take a look at London. You have a mayor named Khan. He's a horrible mayor. He's an incompetent mayor, but he's a horrible, vicious, disgusting mayor. I think he's done a terrible job. London's a different place. I love London. I love London. And I hate to see it happen. You know, my roots are in Europe, as you know.
Right.
And I hate to see that happen. This is one of the great places in the world, and they're allowing people just to come in and unchecked, unvetted. He's a disaster. He's a disaster. He's got a totally different ideology of what he's supposed to have. And he gets elected because so many people have come in and they vote for him now because, you know, it's like, it's one of those things. But I hate what's happened to London, and I hate what's happened to Paris. I hate when I see it.
I hate it too, mate. Like, seriously, we all hate it. So thank you, Mr. Leader of the free world, for using your power to point it out. Let's speak now to Andy Preston, political commentator, former independent mayor of Middlesbrough, knows a thing or two about mayoring about the place. And talking about having a right old mayor, I mean, Sadiq Khan's not exactly the most popular man in the world, is he? But everything that Trump says, I mean, it's very anti-diplomatic. It doesn't follow the normal protocol to sort of single out a particular person and call them disgusting. But I kind of feel like, yes, we've got someone on our side. They're listening.
Hi, Alex. You know what? I mean, Trump hates him, doesn't he? Trump absolutely hates him. It's deeply personal with Trump and Khan. And actually, it's not diplomatic. I don't think it's clever, first of all, because despite what you think of Sadiq Khan, we'll all have views on London's weaknesses and possibly some strengths and the way it's gone. The reason Sadiq Khan's in power is not because of immigration, it's because London is nearly always Labour. It always was, and ever since it's had a directly elected mayor, apart from the hugely charismatic Boris Johnson, Labour have been in complete control. So Trump is wrong on that.
Do you think so? I think he's probably got a point there. I actually think he's probably got the point there because Labour lost a lot of votes to the Muslim vote in lots of other parts of the UK, but not in London. And I just think, you know, when you look at how rapidly the demography of London has changed, what's happened, and, you know, you look at polling, you look at elections over the course of the time that we've had a London mayor, and essentially we've now created donuts because the very middle has become Labour, and all the sort of basically the natives have all moved out to the suburbs, and that's where you've got the Conservative vote. So arguably, if the demography hadn't changed as rapidly as it has, if we were still in London, a majority British city, do you really think Sadiq Khan would still be getting into power?
Well, I don't know, Alex, but I suspect so, yes. And as I say, look, before there was an elected mayor, I think it started in about 2002 or maybe a bit earlier with Ken Livingstone, there was a Greater London Council, and Ken Livingstone was the boss of that for Labour forever. He was the boss forever. Then Livingstone became the mayor of London for 2 terms. Then Boris Johnson, not because the Tories were popular, but because he was deeply charismatic. Johnson had 2 terms. Then it goes back to Labour. So I think it's very hard to suggest that Sadiq Khan and Labour are in power because of immigration. Undoubtedly, immigration's been huge, and undoubtedly it's changed London for better or worse. But I think it's wrong to say that Labour are in power because of immigration.
And what is quite entertaining to watch is that awkward moment, because you've had Starmer doing his best to fawn all over Donald Trump. I mean, actually, I could see it in my sleep, that moment where they're sitting at the Oval Office in front of the fireplace, and by this point, everyone's like, ooh, is he going to get a public dressing down? Because of Trump, you just don't know. He could be like, all right, mate, how you doing? We think you're great. Or, why have you not got a suit on? Who do you think you are? And so Starmer sits there, and he's being so obsequious, isn't he? He's sort of like crawling about the place, patting his lapels, getting the special invitation out of his jacket inside pocket.
It was totally cringe,
so
Alex.
Gross.
It It was embarrassing. It was I actually think people think Starmer did well. I think he embarrassed Britain and humiliated us.
It was a bit nauseous. But the
really
thing is, what's hilarious about all of this, of course, is that those people who love Sadiq Khan, think he's sort of, you know, the emblem of modern progressive leftism, hates Donald Trump, are all expecting Starmer to turn around and go, "How dare you say that about the mayor?" He ain't going to, is he?
Well, that's it. That's exactly right. And that's why the Starmer thing with Trump is so cringeworthy. It's because we all know that deep down, Starmer hates Trump. Trump is the opposite of everything that Starmer is. Trump is the opposite of everything that Starmer believes in. But he's desperate. He's the school SWAT trying to get in with the school bully. And it just doesn't work. It's like typical Starmer. It's not authentic, Alex. And that's why it's so cringeworthy. And he should stick up for his mate and his co-party leader, co-party senior figure, Sadiq Khan. But he won't. He's got this obsession with cozying up to Trump. That's going to come back, Alex, to bite him, because Trump's going to turn on Britain like he's turning on everybody else right now. He ain't going to turn
on Britain. He's going to turn on Starmer. This is my prediction, right? Which segues nicely into what we're talking about next, which is, again, he's on a rampage at the moment. He's calling European leaders weak, saying that they don't know what to do. They want to be politically correct, but it makes them weak. That's what it makes them, weak.
And he's right, isn't he?
They talk, but they don't produce. The war keeps going on when it comes to Ukraine. But he's basically, this is sort of comes out of the new US security strategy, which was published last week, where he talks about civilizational erasure in Europe. And he's not wrong. Anyone living in any European city can see it happening in front of their very eyes.
Trump says some outrageous things, and he lives by saying outrageous things. But you know what? Deep down, Alex, there's always a hint, the merest hint of truth. And there is a hint of truth. And Trump is right in that respect. However, to suggest that Europe is declining while the US is advancing, while that might be true in a gross economic view, the US, every single USA city would swap their crime rate and their murder rate and their levels of equality, their death rate, for any of the major European cities.
Oh, they wouldn't for London. London's worse than all the scariest US cities.
Alex, London has its problems, but don't believe the nonsense about how London is more dangerous than US cities. They have murder rates 5 and 10 times higher than London. London has its problems and they need fixing, and we need to hold Sadiq Khan to account. But to pretend that the US is better for crime, for health and all these things...
I don't know. I was speaking to my cousin the other day. He came to stay with me. He lives in Dalston, in Hackney, and they're just used to, like, mass machete attacks and drive-by shootings now. So I really, you know, it depends what part of London you're talking about, but I think things are a lot worse than you could imagine. But anyway, let's go...
I lived in Brixton in the late 80s, and our own experiences of crime will depend on where we live and what we see. And look, but if we look at broad citywide data, which is published everywhere, US murder rates are 5 to 10 times higher in every US city than London, and the same for Paris and all of the other big European cities. US is struggling. It's economically doing okay because of the tech sector. But what Trump is trying to do, he's aware that he's got midterms getting very close. He's trying to paint Europe as a place of absolute chaos, which it isn't. It has problems, but it isn't chaotic.
Do you know, I don't think it's about that. I don't think he's playing to his own audience on this. I don't see how saying that Europe is, you know, falling apart is going to make him popular with his voters back at home. I think he really cares. I think he definitely does think Europe is falling apart.
Well, look, I think with everything Trump says, there's a hint of truth. But please, everyone, don't think that the US is really safe and the UK is really dangerous.
OK, I mean, that I accept. I don't think anyone thinks that the US is some sort of Elysian fields where there's no murders, you know, gun attacks, high school shootings. But it's got a lot of it. We know that. But I want to go back to the US security strategy and circle back on what we were saying about vengeance on Britain. I don't think there's going to be vengeance on Britain. I think he genuinely loves Britain, genuinely. But actually, I do think the fact that this is in a published security strategy, talking about how he essentially wants Europe to sort itself out, or else talking about he wants to see populist parties come into power, I would imagine that this will actually have consequences. I would imagine the next time there's a press conference at the Oval Office, there might not be as much conviviality or bonhomie as there has been previously. And he's always got cards to play, Trump. He's wildly unpredictable, and he could turn around and go, right, unless you do X, Y, and Z because of what you're doing to your own people, we're going to essentially put tariffs up against you. That would be an American form of, I suppose, laying down sanctions against countries which, for instance, he believes aren't upholding freedom of speech. I honestly do think that we're getting to a moment where Trump is going to suddenly switch, not on Britain, but on our government.
Yeah, quite possibly. You might be right, Alex, to draw that distinction actually between Britain and our government. And something that Trump has done brilliantly that's great for America, it's great for Europe, and it's great for peace in some regards, and that he is getting Europe to stand up to its responsibilities when it comes to defending your own nation and your neighbours. Because for years, you know, every single US president has made it clear that the US is getting very tired of bankrolling NATO. And Trump's been the one who's actually pushed it to the point where we're all saying, actually, yes, we have had a free ride. We do need to stand up on our own, and we can't rely on the US. And that's really clear. And that's been coming, and Trump has done that really well. I think Europe's leaders have been weak. I think they have put up with far too much immigration. They've been very soft on defence, and this is a strong wake-up call, and this is something I would praise Trump for.
Indeed, I would praise him too. Thank you ever so much, Andy Preston. I'm going to give you some praise because you're always a brilliant guest. OK, we're going to take a short break now. If you want to comment on any of the things we have been talking about, it's 03444 99 1000 on WhatsApp. You can also leave me a voice note on that number on WhatsApp. 8722 is the number if you'd like to send a text message. If that is more your thing, then you've got to write the word talk before you text. We're going to have a little break, but come back for some more because there's plenty more at the buffet of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
When will that horrible war in Ukraine finally end? When? It is dragged on. War of attrition. We just seem to be constantly circling around a stalemate on this. We're giving Zelensky just enough weapons to just about hold the Russians back. We're sanctioning Russia just about enough, but it's not really making any sort of difference. We're just sort of wading through treacle at this point. Well, things might be coming to a head. At the same time, we've also learned that a British soldier has died in Ukraine. Let's speak now to Major General Chip Chapman, former head of MOD's counter-terrorism. Great to have you on the show. Talk to us, first of all, about the British soldier who has died in Ukraine. Do we know what he was doing there and what happened?
Well, I don't think we do. I mean, we know his name, Lance Corporal George Hooley of the Parachute Regiment, my own regiment, but we don't know within the Parachute Regiment what part of that. There is a Special Forces support group. I would probably think he would be part of that, which has probably been involved in training Ukrainians somewhere in the rear of Ukraine, the west of Ukraine, but the MOD would neither confirm or deny that. We have been training, of course, the Ukrainians in the UK. The 61,000 have been trained under a thing called Operation Interflex. And in a way, if you look at the theatre of operations, that could be said to be the their rear of the theatre because it's somewhere where Ukrainian soldiers who are trained have sort of psychological security. They don't have a chance of being slammed by Russian missiles or drones.
Could this end up having consequences? So now that we know and it's been confirmed that a British soldier has died in Ukraine, doing something in Ukraine, might this provoke a response from Russia?
I don't think so. I mean, Russia will use it in propaganda terms, but in terms of their internal messaging, they've already always said that they consider themselves at war with NATO, just not a hot war, more of a cold war. But that is, again, to make sure that they maintain the balance of their population on their side in terms of the digital authoritarianism that prevails in Russia at the moment. And it's that part of the preparation of the informational battlefield, or cognitive warfare, as we call it, which Russia's been very good at doing, particularly in the disinformation in open societies. So I don't think it will have any tangible impact. Of course, rather like this week, we had the report on the killing of Dawn Sturgis. You know, the Brits at the time or now could have said that was an act of war. Of course, we didn't, and neither will Russia say that this is an act of war, which all wars are for political objectives, so of course they could if they really wanted to. But from a Russian perspective, of course, what's going on in Ukraine is not a war. It's a special military operation, supposedly limited.
Now, it seems to me that all of this back and forth, trying to find a solution, a golden bridge for Putin, something that might satisfy Volodymyr Zelensky as well, is about to come to a head. And we're sort of reaching a climax here, where we've had a virtual meeting of the so-called coalition of the willing. We've had America talking with France, UK and Germany about what needs to be done to bring peace. Ukraine is finishing work on 20 points of a document that could define the parameters for ending the war. And they're going to deliver that document to the United States in the near future. But what we also know is that Donald Trump's turned around and said to Volodymyr Zelensky, if you don't get this sorted by Christmas, you're out. We're leaving it. We're not going to bother helping anymore. Now, if I was Putin, I would quite happily just reject whatever it is that Zelensky comes up with, because he knows, or at least he might think he knows, that Ukraine's not going to get America's backing anymore. And it's a bit like a wolf circling a pack and all of a sudden thinking, oh, look, that's an isolated, vulnerable thing there. In you go. I have a feeling this isn't going to work out very well for Ukraine.
Well, I think Putin's already rejected anything that is said anyway. He's been uncompromising. And the best way to look at this is a triangle when you have pressure, concessions and reward. At the moment, President Putin wants a reward, and that's particularly in terms of the Donbass, bits of Zaporizhia with the nuclear power plant there, a caveating of Ukrainian sovereignty, a caveating of the military in Ukraine, future elections. So he wants major concessions from Ukraine. He doesn't want to give any concessions himself. If he were to be given the Donbass, which he thinks that, and we think that US seem to think at the moment, that Ukraine should give up and that Russia has failed to occupy. So that, of course, breaks every international law in terms of aggression. But really, the chasm at the moment between the European side and the American side is what Russia wants and what Ukraine needs are two completely different things. What Russia wants to begin with is territory. What Ukraine needs is at least some sort of security guarantees. Russia rejects that, and Russia rejects the notion also that there should be a ceasefire first and then negotiations, which is generally the European position. That also was the Trump and American position until the last sort of 3 or 4 days, when he signed up to that, when the Europeans last went to America to have a chat with him.
It seems to me that Vladimir Putin's running circles around everybody, quite frankly. I think that there's a part of America that's slightly afraid of him. I think that he's turned out to be more aggressive and unpredictable than people realised. How precarious is the situation if it comes to pass that there is no peace settlement? It seems for the birds that there could be one. And America reverse ferrets out of taking any part in this, and Europe is left to decide, are we going to alone defend Ukraine or not? What does tomorrow look like?
Well, I think we've had a taste for that, and your last guest and yourself alluded to that, Alex, in terms of, yo-yo, in terms of the national security strategy. You're on your own Europe, where Europe was prioritised as number 3 priority for America, the Western Hemisphere. The Monroe Doctrine is number 1, the Indo-Pacific is number 2. I don't think in the European terms that they can afford to abandon Ukraine, because the real worry for European powers is that you would have a war after the war if there is not a just and durable peace. Now, that is the real chasm that we find ourselves, whereas Trump wants, for good reasons, what we would call a humanitarian peace, stop the killing and go home. But either side of that, there's a great difference between a surrender peace, which essentially is what Russia wants, and a just and durable peace, which is what the Europeans and Zelensky want.
Major General Chip Champman, thank you ever so much for coming and giving us your expertise on... Oh, we need some expertise, don't we, on this subject? So listen, we've got some breaking news for you now, talking about Europe being divided and weak and possibly too woke for its own good. Too politically correct, as Donald Trump put it. It turns out that Iceland has now joined Spain, Ireland, Slovenia and the Netherlands in saying it will boycott the Eurovision Song Contest next year. They've withdrawn their participation after it transpires that Israel was going to be allowed to take part. Participation of Israeli national broadcaster Kan in the contest has created disunity among both members of the European Broadcasting Union and the general public, said Icelandic broadcaster RUV in a statement. So there you go. Talk about Europe not being on the right side of history, being too politically correct, not standing up for Western values and defending allies of a similar ilk. Nope. Blimmin' Eurovision Song Contest, that's a horror story anyway. But there you go, all those countries, Iceland, Spain, Ireland, Slovenia and the Netherlands, saying it's now going to boycott the song contest. There you go, put that in your pipe and smoke it. Let's have a short break now, but after the break we're going to be talking to Alex's mum's favourite, also one of mine, Dr. Rakib Ehsan, who has been writing brilliant stuff on the future of Islam and Britain, and talking about how an assertive new generation of Muslims is putting faith first. So what does that mean for Britain? What's that going to look like? And also, the Conservatives have been demanding that mosques now must be made to cooperate with the grooming gangs inquiry and foreign sex offenders and get them kicked out of the country, saying that Pakistan could face visa sanctions if it refuses to take offenders back. We're going to get Rakib's opinions on all of that stuff just after this.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
There's one thing that is facing the West, Europe in particular, that is just so incredibly hard to discuss. Not only discuss, it's very incredibly hard to know how to handle it, which is the rise of Islam. Now, there are people out there who think, well, that's fine. You know, we can change as a society, no problem. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's other people who regard any religion that isn't indigenous, let's say, to their country as a sort of existential civilizational threat. We also know that when it comes to acts of terror, the grooming gangs, so on and so forth, that, well, a particular culture connected to a particular religion was the common denominator. We also know, looking at the rapidly changing demographics, not just in Britain, but across Europe, that this issue is only going to become more and more prominent. And yet what we do about it, when it is very clear expectations that the children of immigrants would integrate and become even more British with every passing generation, has actually been the inverse of the truth. It's hard now to know what you do to make a society which can coalesce around shared culture, shared principle, shared belief. Let's speak to Dr. Rakib Ehsan, who is utterly fantastic on these issues. Rakib, I always love having you on the show because you are both fearless, but you are also beautifully pragmatic and nuanced. And you've written a fantastic article about Islam in Britain. I don't really know where to begin with all of this, but in brief, it seems that we do have something that needs to be addressed. If we just try and push it under the carpet, it's only going to become more problematic, and yet no one quite knows how to address it, which is the vast increase of the number of Muslims, not just in the UK, but across Europe. So what do you think is in store for the United Kingdom?
Well, I think, firstly, Alex, we have to make the point that when you look at the demographics of the UK, it is rapidly changing in terms of ethnicity and religion. And I think that much of that is being driven by the population growth of British Muslims, a population which is ethnically diverse. But what's really interesting is that you talked a little bit there about integration. I think what we're witnessing is almost a kind of integration paradox. That theory that migrant communities, as they become more integrated generation after generation, they socially mix with different groups, they become more integrated in the labour market, they might do away with their ancestral and faith-based identities. But actually, when you look at UK-born younger British Muslims, yes, they are more socially integrated. They're more likely to be white-collar professionals. They're more likely to have a university degree. But compared to their elders, many of whom were born abroad, they came to the UK and had naturally positive orientations towards British democracy because of the level of corruption, instability, and indeed conflict in their country of origin, compared to their elders, their parents and grandparents who may have been born in a different country, they're more likely to identify as Muslim first. First and foremost, their faith comes first. And I think that that's really interesting because that goes against many of the theories that we have in the field of integration. So what you're seeing, we're witnessing the rise of a very confident, well-educated and well-resourced generation of British Muslims. And with that assertiveness, that's being reflected across various parts of British national life, especially in our politics.
Yeah, it's the word assertive, which I want to drill down on the most, because that is a word that I use myself. And I'm going to be honest with you, Rakib, it blimmin' worries me. I'm very worried as somebody who worried on multiple grounds. So first of all, I'm worried because I'm a white Brit, and I'm not going to make this about skin colour, because look, my stepsister is mixed race. It's not about skin colour, but there is a sense of when you start looking at these rapid demographic changes in a country, you start feeling less and less like it is yours, and it, something that was hereditary from your ancestors is being taken away, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I think that however ugly that might sound as a testament, however much we're not allowed to think like that, I think it's biologically hardwired into human beings as a tribal animal that, this is my patch of land that's always belonged to my, clan, my pride, and now it's not anymore. We're going to have to share it. And so I think that's sort of, unfortunately, the way human beings are just wired up as beings. So on one hand, I worry from that point of view. On the other hand, the thing that terrifies me the most is the more that there's an expansion of assertive Islam in this country, the more I worry that before I've even shuffled off my mortal coil, we'll live in a land where in certain parts of the UK, if a girl wanted to leave the house, the mum's going to be, oh, don't forget your hijab, love. You know what they're like out there, that morality police. Before you go and meet such as, oh, you can't go meet your boyfriend anymore. I mean, am I being paranoid? Because when I look at other parts of the world, and I can take multiple examples, throughout history, Christians have largely been turfed out and then replaced by Islam. It tends to happen over the course of many, many centuries. Lebanon, however, a little bit more on fast forward. And so I do have to worry. I feel like I would, I'd have to have some sort of cognitive dissonance in order to not feel alarmed at what's going on. What on earth? I mean, can you reassure me that there isn't anything to worry about in these aspects? And if there is, what on earth can be done? Should anything be done?
Well, I think firstly, it's good that we're talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think that this is the point that, Alex, I'd consider yourself to be a bit of a traditional British nationalist, if you could phrase it that way. Now, in some ways, that you'll share certain things, certain beliefs with Islamic social conservatives. For example, I don't think you'd be very pleased that we're a country where 250,000 abortions take place a year. I think that on euthanasia, I'd suspect that you'd see that the more liberal side of the argument of assisted dying, I can't really relate to it at all. I think it goes directly against sanctity of life. I think that for me, I personally, I have that preference that I believe that children ultimately should be born under wedlock, because I think that marriage, ultimately a union between a man and a woman, and I think that's a point, understanding the reality of biological sex as well. I think that gives children the best chance in life, especially when it comes to their personal development. So I think that when it comes to what traditional British nationalists and Islamic social conservatives, I think there's actually much common ground to be struck and to work with. But I think the issue is when you talk about, for example, banning the burning of holy scriptures or illustrations of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, I think that's where the tensions lie, because I think that with religious freedom has to come that right to ultimately dissent against organised religion, and some people say even mocking religion. I think those are the real tensions that we're really seeing in modern Britain, because I think, and some people find that deeply worrying. And I think that also that there's a debate to be had in terms of Islamist extremism. I don't think there's a debate. I think that for some time we haven't taken enough action. And I think that situation becomes so bad, Alex, is that you have Gulf states ultimately looking at the UK and thinking you're a bit of a liability when it comes to handling Islamist extremism.
Yeah. No, this is true. And actually a brilliant example in all of this, I'd say, is actually Afghanistan. Because when you look at footage from like the 50s, 60s, 70s, Afghanistan was a thriving place. Americans had gone over to live there. People were having garden parties with G&Ts wearing miniskirts. It looked like the place to be. And then you look at Afghanistan now, and we're talking about in a lifetime, it has gone completely 180 from being a sort of progressive liberal country into what to me looks like an absolute absolute hellhole. And I can't imagine that the majority of people in Afghanistan were people who wanted extremism, who wanted that sort of, type of Islamism. And so what it suggests to me is you don't actually need all of a sudden to wait for the wrong people to become a majority before you're in trouble. That actually when you have and allow that to fester and breathe and grow in your country, that as soon as it gets to a certain amount, it's enough, frankly, for these people to start making everybody's life a misery.
No, absolutely. And I think a minority of people can cause a great deal of trouble for the majority. And I think that the point to make here is that Islamist extremism is the primary terror threat in modern Britain. And then also you talked about the grooming gangs as well. And there are studies which very much show that men of Pakistani Muslim heritage, they're disproportionately represented when it comes to prosecutions for what you could say is group localized child sexual exploitation. So, and I think that you have other issues, very, very serious issues such as honor-based violence. So I think the point to make is that many British Muslims, they enjoy the freedoms, opportunities and protection which are afforded to them under British democracy. But I think that in terms of being a good citizen, I think that also requires looking at what's going on within your own communities and challenging those problematic attitudes and behaviours.
This is interesting, actually, and thank you for teeing up what I wanted to ask you next, which is what Kemi Badenoch has said, that mosques must be compelled to cooperate and give evidence to the grooming gang inquiry. Right on you are, totally agree. But to me, there seems to be a problem where, look, in a way, there's a golden opportunity here for Muslim Britain. It's a golden opportunity because a lot of these men coming over on small boats and assaulting young women are coming from Muslim countries. There's an opportunity here for imams to be very outspoken on this, to say we personally will go and speak to these men and educate them. We're going to demonstrate that we're on the side of the Brits who are worried about their daughters because we get a little bit of where these men have come from. We might speak their language. We share a faith, so we might be able to parlay with them a little bit. There's an opportunity here, actually, for Islam to prove to the rest of us that it isn't to be feared, that it's on our side. And yet, over and over again, it seems to me Muslim communities take the opposite approach, that they close ranks, that they become defensive, that they actually sort of exacerbate the worries.
Well, I think that there's certain elements of British Muslim communities that are guilty of that. But then if you look at Adnan Hussain, for example, the independent MP for Blackburn, he was directly calling for the deportation of Afghan nationals who are found guilty of raping a schoolgirl recently in Leamington Spa. So I think that another point I'd make is that Salman Abedi, the suicide bomber behind the horrific terrorist attack at Manchester Arena back in 2017, he was banned from a mosque in the local area because of his views which were sympathetic to ISIS. And there were members of the communities that alerted the local authorities, but it seemed like very little action was done. So I think that there is an opportunity for British Muslims to really take action in the name of the common good. But we have to also recognise that there have been occasions where they've done that, but their concerns have been left unnoticed and they haven't been taken seriously by the political and security establishment.
Do you know, you make a very important point there, which is actually sometimes I think, we've got all this sort of conversation about Christmas. Is it going to offend people if we talk about Christmas? Is it going to offend people of other religions? Quite frankly, I don't think they care. I don't think Muslims at all worried about people having Christmas trees and baubles and singing Hark the Herald Angels Sing. It seems to be some sort of weird pathological self-flagellation of our ruling classes. Rakib, thank you ever so much. I wish I could talk to you for hours on end. I could talk to you all day. He always just makes me feel a lot more sane and gathered together. The brilliant Dr. Ehsan there. OK, we're going to be taking a short break now. If you want to comment on anything, the number is 03444991000 for WhatsApp or to make a phone call, 87222. Talk before your message, please. Don't go anywhere. Lots more coming up.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. How you doing? How you diddling? How was that first hour? Did you enjoy it? Did you like it? Do you want some more of you? And you just joined us. Where have you been? Oh, that's right, probably at work. Don't you worry. I'm going to keep you company for the next 2 hours if you should decide to have me. And I hope that you've got something nice and stiff poured, because we can relax you into a lovely, gentle evening where we're going to try and smooth over all of your concerns. Actually, we're not. We're just going to crank up the panic because there's a lot to be worried about. But I do see, actually, you know, I was thinking this the other day, as worried as I am, and I am, right, about the future of Europe, I'm as worried as Trump, baby, as worried as I am, I'm also sort of slightly reassured because, and I'll explain why, reassured for a number of reasons. Number one, the leader of the free world has said, Europe, come on, you're really at the 11th hour now. You're making a heck of a mess in preserving your country's culture, in maintaining borders for your own safety, basically, your own integrity. And it's like, great, okay, we're speaking about this out loud now. We can also see politically that the public are going, yeah, we can't do this thing we've been doing for the last 20 years, you know, oh, you know, diversity is our strength, come by our, not working. Not working. And so it seems to me we've got a lot of political changes on the horizon. And also, ever since that Mr. Musk bought Twitter and renamed it X, the game has changed, hasn't it, in what we know and how we know that we know what we know. Once upon a time, people just watched the 6 and 10, didn't they? And so whatever was said by the newsreader was the truth. That was that then. Now all of a sudden we can have this huge conversation, international global stuff, where people can put leaks up and photographs and clips from someone, you know, that you don't have to have someone curating a half-hour news experience for you. You can just doom scroll 24 hours a day if you want, get your news from wherever. Of course, there's a lot of fake news rumbling around in that, but it really has changed the way we think about and discuss issues. And there's also been the emergence, of course, of more outspoken channels, let's say, like us, who are doing things a little bit differently. So as worried as you are, we are at the moment, I think, right in that middle bit. We're at the fulcrum, the turning point of generational attitudes and political approaches. So change is going to come. I'm certain of it. Guess who we've got on the show, guys? I love this guy. I can't wait to see if he's managed to coordinate with my clothing, because he normally does somehow by osmosis, is Mr. Ralph Schallhammer, head of Centre for Applied History at the Matthias Corvinus Collegium in Budapest. You kind of have. Look at that.
We do the whole ebony and ivory thing today. I think that's still fine. That still qualifies as being synchronized.
Oh, look, aren't we cute? I love that. How you doing, Ralph?
Very good. How are you doing these days?
Well, do you know what? I'm all right. I mean, I basically, you know, oscillate from feeling doom-laden to actually feeling quite positive. And at the moment, I've swung to positivity because yesterday I spent the day with a rather glorious young man. Oh, yeah, you might say, who's that, Alex? Who have you been hanging out with, eh? Well, he's 30 years old, handsome, loves right-wingery. Think he might actually save Europe while he's at it. Mr. Jordan Bardella, who is tipped to be the future president of France. For those who don't know him, he is the president of the party Rassemblement National, formerly led by Marine Le Pen, well, still led by Marine Le Pen, but she may be banned from standing as the presidential candidate. She was going to win it. She may be banned because of lawfare. Don't need to go into the detail of that. But anyway, she's got her protege, her lion cub, as she calls him. And it turns out in the polling, well, he might even be doing better than her. It seems like a slam dunk that Mr. Bardella could be the next president of France in 2027, and he's decided that he would love it if Nigel Farage was always also the Prime Minister, and then he'd allow us to push back boats. Hurrah! That looks like good news.
I mean, to be quite honest, does he really have to change the laws for that? I mean, is there not a law in France that says you cannot use it as a staging ground for an invasion of Britain. I mean, honestly, if Hitler would have known that he didn't have to declare war, that he could just waltz into France and then prepare his channel operations at the Battle over Britain, without any legal repercussions, he would have done things differently. I think this is a very odd tendency we have all over Europe at the moment from many politicians to say, when I'm in charge, I will change the laws. No, no, no. The laws are all on the books. You need to execute the laws. And we can go over the whole list of things that worry us, from migration to foreign policy, to everything there is, the European Convention on Human Rights and everything. The laws are all there. It's just that politicians, and very often I have to say parts of the judiciary, have just decided not to execute them or not to execute them properly. So all these promises, I'm going to make new laws. We don't need new laws. Execute the laws that are on the book. I'm sure there are laws in France that do not allow for illegal migrants, illegal immigrants to use it as a staging ground for them setting over to Britain.
But he represents, doesn't he, something that has been happening a while in Europe, something that arguably started with Brexit, which is the rise of so-called populism. But it ain't going anywhere. Doesn't matter how much they demonise it. Doesn't matter how they try and force these parties to not have any sort of stakeholder in actual power. The public are relentless. They know that they want that political change. And he's quite a sort of, Bardella this is, it's quite a sort of... a very different character than a populist leader I've seen. Perhaps maybe Sebastian Kurz from Austria might have been similar, because he was super young as well, wasn't he? But there is something extremely interesting about this next generation of politicians who could well be finding themselves in positions of authority in Europe, and a Europe where, for a long time, it seems to me that the sort of global socialists have run the shop and managed to trammel any idea of sovereignty, nationality, social conservatism, and yet they seem to be the dying breed now, and we're seeing more and more European politicians, Meloni, Orban, although he's been around for a while. We saw Wilders finally sort of break through in the Netherlands, didn't really last long though, but it seems to me that we could end up with a Europe once again of a cooperation of nation states.
Well, that'd be very nice, but I have to admit that in many ways, even the term populism is outdated, because the public anger against establishment politicians has reached such a level that you could run a scarecrow with a sign that says, I'm just not like those guys, and probably the scarecrow would win elections. And this is what the case in France. I mean, Emmanuel Macron has been an utter disappointment, but was pretty much for the entirety of his terms backed by the mainstream media. I remember there was, I think it was either Newsweek or Times, and one of those two. They had the cover page. It had like a checklist on it and a picture of Macron. It was like, saving France, check. Standing up to Trump, check. And the last point that remained was saving Europe. But the subtone of the title was, but he will be successful as well. And it turned out it was a complete disaster. His approval rate is, I think, 15%. So 85% of the people in France would probably prefer anyone except Macron. I think it's very true with Starmer in the UK as well. It's that if you run a campaign that is, I'm not Keir Starmer, I think you will probably get over 50%.
There you were. I was going to build up the brilliant Bardella, and I thought you'd be, yes, he's brilliant. What a promising young leader. You're like, well, he could just as well be a scarecrow. Never mind.
No. Listen. This is what distinguishes us right-wingers from the rest. I mean, I'm all for appearances. I like this a lot, but I'm increasingly also for results. So this is the key thing. To be quite honest, I know it's not going to happen. If Keir Starmer would be, it's Christmas time, like in a Charles Dickensian way, if he would be visited by the Christmas spirits, and then he would wake up one day and say, oh my God, my ways have been entirely wrong. I've mistreated the British people. I was not a good representative. I put everybody's interest first except those of the British people. I changed my ways. I'd be willing to forgive him. And I'm not even British. You know what I mean? So for me, politics is like calling a plumber. Do your job and do it well. That's all that matters for me. If you were a bad plumber in the past, but somehow you become the best plumber when you come, to my kitchen, I'm fine with it. So I'm all for populism. I like him. I like Bardella. I like Le Pen. I like Orban. I'm all for those. But I want to see results. They can't at the moment. They're not yet in charge. But once they are, I want to see results.
Let us talk about the results of Starmer, asking other Europeans to tinker about with the ECHR so it doesn't seem to help the asylum seekers so much. I mean, Oh, my word. Every time you've seen anybody, anywhere, and even though actually the majority of the signatories are like, yeah, you got a point, mate, we also need to see this thing change because it's hurting us as well. But it's just that these gargantuan treaties set in stone, sort of backed spiritually by the EU, you can't change them. You can't renegotiate. You can't. It's just too complicated. It's a bit like saying, look at this massive Rubik's Cube, the size of Jupiter. If only we could just get all the squares to line up. It's like, just get rid of it.
No, it's sort of like everybody, particularly the left, would always tell you that laws evolve as societies evolve, that laws need to change. I don't know how long Britain had laws against sodomy, which is the antiquated term for homosexuality. And nobody would say, well, it was banned once, it needs to be banned forever, with the exception of the European Convention on Human Rights. Like, it's a document from the 1950s that needs to stay in place forever. It's like Moses coming down from Mount Sinai with the Ten Commandments. It cannot be changed under any circumstances. Any other law is up for grabs. Genders, it's 1 or 2, it's 70. Homosexuality, illegal, legal, whatever. But the European Convention on Human Rights can never be changed. It's a completely ridiculous position. It's out of date, it's out of time. It was designed for dissidents from the Soviet Union coming to Western Europe. It was designed for Hungarians, for Czechs fleeing from the Iron Curtain. That it was designed for. It was never designed for mass migration from Somalia, Afghanistan, and the Middle East. It's a completely absurd argument. And the fact that now everybody has to go to Europe and say, oh, could we change it? Could we do it differently? Britain is a sovereign nation. Wasn't that the point of Brexit? I mean, I come to this every time again when I talk to you. There was Brexit. Screw the ECHR. If you no longer want it, which I think is the right process, the right step, forget about it. This is playing for time, so that he can say, oh, I've talked to my European partners and we will look at it and we will have a meeting and we will have a summit, and then in 15, 20, 25 years, maybe we will have an additional clause. No, it's be done with it.
Do you know, it's interesting, actually, because I had the same thought yesterday when I was chatting away with Mr. Bardella, because his approach is, do you know what, we're not going to leave the EU. I think electorally he knows that the French people don't actually want to leave the EU because they're really worried about what will happen if they get kicked out of the euro. Basically, that's the main concern. But it doesn't, in France it doesn't play well to say we want to leave the EU fully. But he said, what I will do is I'm going to make sure the EU goes allows us to do that we're going to have a referendum on immigration. And I'm like, ooh, this kind of reminds me of the sort of idea that David Cameron thought when he could go to Brussels and say, please, can we have all these competences back? Because this doesn't suit the British people. And if you don't give us this stuff, we might leave. And Europe went, nah, no, sorry. If we start tinkering with our rules, like you said, it's like the tablet of stone, Moses coming down going, that's it, it's done. The European Union is so sort of megalomaniacal. It is so sort of self-aggrandizing and self-sustaining that it will not allow anybody to change anything because they see that as a chink in the armour. They see that as someone pulling on a thread and the whole thing will unravel. And so I thought to myself when Jordan Bardella was explaining this, I was like, all right, interesting, because maybe actually, because I think tactically they do want to leave the EU, if I'm honest with you. I wonder if this is him looking at what happened with Brexit and saying, right, if we do the same thing, we make the play that we want Europe to change and do the let's try and reform it from the inside out. And then when they say no, it gives us the justification to say, all right, then we're shipping out.
Oh, well, I think one of the things they could do is you don't even have to leave the European Union, but you just have to neutralize its most destructive parts. And I think the French, and hopefully if the elections go in the way that we hope they go, together with other nations can do this. There are, and I'm not trying to go against the grain here, but of course there are some elements of the original idea of European unification that I think are worth preserving. A common market is not a bad thing. I think the idea that, for example, when you negotiate with non-European powers, it is good to have some common ground. I mean, Austria alone cannot be very powerful when it negotiates, and also the French not alone, with the US, with China, Russia, or India. To be a bloc, a European bloc, I think can be very helpful. But is it necessary that the curvature of bananas is decided in Brussels? I mean, you have been in Brussels, you know this. Right? Do you need something like a European Parliament that is a parliament that does not even have the right to suggest laws? I mean, it's the thing, they can vote on laws that come from somewhere else. This is not really a parliament. So I think there are many things that just, as you say, it just got blown completely out of proportion. Cut it back, like groom it like a tree, like a beautiful English garden.
Bonsai that thing.
Yeah, exactly, like a bonsai tree, right?
Turn it back into a twig. But, you know, the thing is, I agree with you. But actually, there's an interesting case in point, which is Hungary, right? Which is exactly where you are, which is when the EU said, right, you've got to take your fair share of migrants. They just went, no, you've got to. We're going to fine you. All right, then. And it's what? It's €1 million a day is the fine, which if you offset that against the amount that we're paying to house these characters, it's a blimmin' good deal.
No.
Have we lost you there, Ralph?
And the other thing is, this was never the European Union because sorry, am I back?
Yeah, you are back. Thank goodness. I was so excited for your answer.
Oh my God, yeah. So this is a very crucial point because we must not forget that what makes up a nation is not just a name on a globe or a map.
Oh, do you know what? I think that Ursula von der Leyen knows we're talking about her. I think she's got in there. There's someone in Brussels who's sort of in the sort of internet interchange, moving different plugs into different sockets. They're not going to let Ralph and I plot our revolution, are they? Because that's what they're like. Anyway, I suppose we'd better say goodbye to Ralph in absentia. Love you, Ralph. Ciao for now. Auf Wiedersehen, pet. OK, let us take a break then. Good opportunity to usher in some commercials because I need to be paid for doing this job, believe it or not. Now, when you come back, we're going to be talking about some pretty serious revelations. Again, totally unsurprising. I mean, before we go to debate, let me have a moan, shall I? We're going to be talking about how it's transpired because we've now got data, police data. Oh, it turns out that women and girls are being sexually assaulted in mixed changing rooms. Who would have thought? Men were going into places where women and girls were getting undressed and some of them are being sexually assaulted. I suppose we had to wait for the data to tell us that that was happening. No, because common sense alone couldn't tell you that it wasn't a good idea to do that. Let's just experiment and see how many girls get attacked, shall we? Oh, they are they? Disgusting. We're discussing that with Fiona McAnina, who's Director of Campaigns for Sex Matters, just after this.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, we've got some breaking for you, which is that we're beginning to get a sniff on the peerages. Oh, you know what it's like, New Year's honours and all that, and who gets to become a peer, blah, 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 blah. We now know who certain nominees are going to be. So here we go. In the world's most unsurprising nominees, of course, from the Labour Party, we know they're going to stack the Lords, aren't they, by making lots of peers, getting rid of the lifetime peers as well, the hereditary peers, because, hey, most of those happen to be Tory. Anyway, by the by... turns out that Starmer has nominated Richard Walker, who's a chairman of the supermarket chain Iceland. I believe, and I'll need this fact check, but I believe Iceland might have been a big donor to the Labour Party, but I don't know. We'll have to look at that. Something tells me. Anyway, Richard Walker, he's been nominated. And then here we go. Don't they always do this? Matthew Doyle, who's the former number 10 Director of Communications. They're among 25 new Labour nominations. See, I told you he was chucking a load in there, making sure that all of his pesky bills sail through without opposition. But some good news is the nominations that have come from Kemi Badenoch. Because basically, it's the best people of talk. That's right, it's me. No, it's not. It's going to be former Olympic swimmer and women's rights activist Sharon Davis. Great nomination. Want that. Dame Sharon Davis, bring it on. We love to hear it. And the brilliant Sir John Redwood. Why is he not in there anyway? I don't get it. He should have been in there ages ago. We love Sir John. In fact, that's exactly what Jodie said to me. She always had a little squeal and a giggle when she read the breaking news about peerages. She's like, Sir John, yeah. We love to hear it. I wonder if Reform are going to get any, given that they're probably going to be the next government. I don't think I need to wonder, because I doubt it. You know, well, why let... You've got Green people in the Lords, you've got Lib Dems in the Lords, you've got Independents, you've got Crossbench. Reform, you allowed any? No, of course not. There'll be Nazis. But do you know what? If I was asked who I would want to be made a peer... Actually, this is a fun game. Should we play this game? You can play this game as well. The number is going to be on your screen while I outline the rules of the game. The rules of the game are very simple. Who would you nominate to be a peer in the House of Lords? There you go. WhatsApp me 03444991000 or send me a message 87222 out the word talk before you text, or indeed leave me a voice note on WhatsApp if you would rather share your thoughts via that particular medium, or perhaps you might want to give me a call and have a chat about it, see if I agree. 03444991000. Register your interest with the brilliant Kieran. The person I would nominate, and I've said this before, is Tim Martin. I love that guy. I love that guy to the bones. He is Mr. Weatherspoons. And do you know what? When you think of everything that man has done, right? When you think how he has saved some of the most beautiful buildings, old Art Deco theatres and cinemas, and he saves those buildings, he preserves them for public use, which is wonderful. That's first. Secondly, Weatherspoons. Anyone from anywhere can go and get a cheap meal. That is so important for Mrs. Miggins. Do you know that? If you can get a breakfast for $3.99 or something, utterly brilliant. Also, it's pints. They're really good value, and the range of booze is phenomenal. You get more stuff in there, your stouts, your porters, your Belgians, your weird American IPAs, your UK craft beer, everything. Everything. They even have cider week. Yes, they do. So that's another good reason. But also, he's kept his pubs as sitting down places, no music, for conversation. When you think of all the things that represents to giving back to community, that man deserves a peerage. Arise, Sir Tim Martin. He needs to be ennobled as well. I love him. I think he's brilliant. And I'd love to see someone like him in the House of Lords. So let me know your thoughts on that. Right, that was the breaking. So it took me off down a bit of a tangent I was not expecting, but it's a good talking point. Let us go back to what I was getting hot under the collar about before the break, which is we've now got police data, OK? Good old data. We got to let some really bad stuff happen and wait for the evidence before we can make decisions in this country, don't we? Don't matter how many people get abused, assaulted, attacked, murdered, raped, you name it. No, they just need to become a statistic before we can make a decision. Because human life and, childhood innocence ain't worth nothing until some weak, lily-livered, lame-o Liberal Labour Party politician can make a decision. No, they got to have the empirical evidence first, because they haven't got an iota of moral decency or courage or conviction, do they? Anyway, New police data has shown that at least 16 rapes and 80 sexual assaults and 65 acts of voyeurism were committed in sports centres in 2023, 1 year alone. That's 3 offences a week that we know of. That's been reported and recorded. And we all know, don't we, especially when it comes to things like sexual assault and harassment, that's a particular area where things tend to not go reported. I mean, imagine all the girls are being creeped out by someone who might be in the toilet staring at them, who were too afraid to say something or reported it to front desk, and front desk were too scared to do anything about it because they were like, oh my gosh, this is going to get us into trouble if we tell that person they can't be in the changing rooms. But 3 offences a week at least, because someone somewhere decided it was the new religion that men should be able to go into women's changing rooms as long as they said they were women. Now, I'm sure that there are some men who have genuine dysphoria and want to use female changing rooms and aren't going in there to put a camera under the door of the toilets or ogle people or whatever. You know, I have no doubt that there are plenty of people, some people, who, you know, are no threat. And, you know, if you want to be called Bill and change your name to Wilhelmina and wear a dress, crack on. Be my guest, don't mind. But it's a different thing when it comes to safety. And what annoys me about this is, why is it as women they don't listen? They don't listen. They wait for all these bad things. They don't listen to us when we send being, you know, harassed on the street, followed home, stalked. Are you though? Nah, it's just women being bigots. Women are bigots. Why don't they listen? Why do they have to wait for the evidence? Let's speak now to Fiona McAnena, Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters. Fiona, what do you make of this news?
Well, as you say, no woman will be surprised by it. The problem we've got is there is this great fashion for pretending that whether you're a man or a woman doesn't matter anymore, or that it's just a matter of choice. And so what the Women's Rights Network, who've done this work, have discovered is that the fashion for mixed changing rooms in leisure centres and swimming pools is just putting more and more women and girls at risk. Now, we already know that the vast majority of sex offences are committed by men. As you rightly say, many offences like voyeurism and just generally being creeped out, being stared at, maybe being groped, many of those never get reported at all. They don't even make the statistics. And then we know that the majority of the victims of those crimes are women and girls. So that's why we have single-sex spaces, anywhere particularly where women or girls are getting undressed or where they feel vulnerable. That's toilets, changing rooms. We separate the sexes mainly for the benefit of women and girls, for everyone's privacy, but we're the ones who suffer these crimes. And now with mobile phones and cameras, it's so easy for anybody to just stick a camera under the door of one of these changing rooms in a swimming pool. And so we've got a situation where the sports authorities are encouraging mixed changing rooms. They think it's all very progressive and it solves the problem of where does the man who claims to be a woman go. But we know that it creates a massive disadvantage for all of us female people, and it's not progress at all.
But why is it, right, when it comes to other things, they can trip over themselves, can't they, to push something through because something might be dangerous or scary? I mean, let's use an example, right? If all of a sudden there was a toy manufacturer and one child, you know, happened to swallow the little plastic gun in the hands of his toy soldier, that's it, product recall. It all goes back. Yet when it comes to women's safety, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about girls having mastectomies when they're young because they're being told that, you know, perhaps you're in the wrong body, and puberty blockers, they're back, aren't they? Single-sex changing rooms. Is it a good idea to put men where girls and women are going to be naked? When it comes to women's sports, is it a good idea to have somebody in a male body punching living daylights out of a woman who's trained all her life for this moment? When it comes to, again, the conversation now about whether or not there's a link between someone's culture and grooming gangs, or between migrants from certain countries and sexual assaults. We know all of those things to be true if you just have a brain wired up when it comes to common sense. Yet when it comes to women's safety, integrity, the innocence of little girls, it's almost like they have to conduct the human experiment first. That we have to get statistics. But the thing is about blimmin' statistics is every single one of these 65 acts of voyeurism, the 16 rapes, the 80 sexual assaults, 3 offences a week in 2023, all of those people are humans whose lives lives have been inexorably changed by having to suffer something utterly reprehensible that should have been prevented in the first place.
Yes, and the report talks about the impact on some of those women, like a teenage girl, for example, who was sexually assaulted in showers in a swimming pool, and how she used to go to school then sobbing every day. She felt so unsafe and insecure. So every single woman or girl who's affected by this, plus all the people who are nervous of going, who feel insecure, some will simply self-exclude, they just won't go. Every single one of those female people matters. And somehow it's as if it's kind of universally accepted that some men behave badly and women just have to put up with it. And yet when it comes to the feelings of one individual trans-identifying person, we're constantly reminded, you know, there are real human beings behind this. Well, of course there are, but women and girls matter just as much as those people do. And somehow that message hasn't landed yet. And instead of designing in safe solutions or safer solutions that we've known for decades have been good, where you separate the sexes, particularly where we undress, they're now reversing that. And we're hearing of leisure centres and swimming pools where that refurbishment takes out the single-sex provision and makes it all mixed sex. And women object to that and sometimes, often, are just ignored.
Like, why is that? Why is it? You know, you kind of felt at one point in society in the West, we've got to a stage where we're doing a good job with this whole thing, that, you know, women were in the workplace, great, that they could take maternity leave, great, we can vote, hurrah, we've had female prime ministers, brilliant, we had one of, you know, our 2 longest serving monarchs. In fact, 3. Our 3 longest serving monarchs in this country have been Elizabeth I, Queen Victoria and Elizabeth II. So you'd think as a nation we understand women are very important, yet when it comes to the hierarchy of protection, we always are the ones that are thrown under the bus. You know, women versus religion. Better not insult certain communities. So let's not make a connection between the way certain members of certain religious communities have misogynistic value. Let's not talk about that. Women, off you go, under the bus. Women and now sexuality, the idea of trans and dysphoria. Oh, well, you know, never mind that some of these girls are going to be stared at or might, you know, have a bit of a brush with something unpleasant, because we've got to defend the right of this man who wants to now call himself Judy and come in the changing rooms. Why? Why are we at the bottom? Because you'd think as a civilised society that prided itself on having one of the first European female prime ministers and a long-standing queen who fought in our armed services, you would think, wouldn't you, that actually we might be a bit mindful. But no, we just seem to be completely sacrificeable when it comes to all the other neo-religious movements out there. Why is that?
Well, I think there are 2 reasons. I think one of them is that generally women are just expected to look out for other people. We're supposed to be the carers. It's a terribly sexist, old-fashioned notion. People should have a choice about whether they play that role. But I think in general in society, there's a kind of notion that our feelings come second, particularly if there's a distressed man about, that he definitely needs more attention. And I think the other reason is that simply because we've had single-sex provision in all the areas where it mattered for a very long time, people have forgotten that that's why we have it. You know, largely it did reduce, to some extent at least, it gave protection and certainly gave peace of mind to a lot of women and girls, that they could go to, for example, the local swimming pool and go into the women's changing room and know there'd be no one male in there. And if there was a man in there, they could run out to reception and get it dealt with. And all of that's gone now. And I think people have just forgotten that we had those things there for a good reason and we still need them.
I mean, look, I am all for the case that if you're a man who, for whatever reason, is dysphoric and you really just, you know, don't want to go in the male changing room because you feel very unsafe. I get that, right? I really get that, because like you said, women are naturally caring and empathetic. It's part of the way we're biologically wired. And I understand if a man with his lippy on and his wig or whatever is, you know, maybe he's had surgery, you know, in the male changing room, Lord knows what he'd be subjected to in terms of mockery, bullying, feeling threatened, all the rest of it. I understand that and I fully empathise, but that doesn't mean that you suddenly change rules and go men can go in women's changing rooms. Surely an easier way of doing this would be making sure that there is a couple of private cubicles that people can use if they don't want to have to go in. I mean, look, actually, do you know, even some men and some women feel uncomfortable in communal changing rooms anyway. You know, there might be people who don't have dysphorias who might think I'd rather just get changed somewhere completely private. But there was such an easier way of handling all of this stuff from the beginning, which again begs the question to me, why is it that women in the modern age are just the first things to be sacrificed? It's too easy. It's just like, oh, women will have to pay the price. It infuriates me.
I think people have forgotten too that just because most men wouldn't do this doesn't mean we can disregard the minority who would, because the men who are motivated to access vulnerable people, particularly children, go up to a lot of trouble to do it. And we've known that through the generations, haven't we? And so you've got to make precautions on the basis that no one male can come in, because no one can tell who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. And I'm afraid that is just as valid whether someone has had surgery and claims to be a woman, or whether he's simply dressed up and claims to be a woman, or whether he really sincerely feels he is a woman. All we know is we see people that we can recognize as being male. We don't inspect people's private parts. We don't want to see them undressed. That's not how we decide who's a man or who's a woman. In general life, you look around in the street and you can always tell who's male and female. So on that basis, the only way for us to keep the bad guys out is keep all the guys out.
Absolutely right, Fiona McInerney. Thank you ever so much, Director of Campaigns for Sex Matters. Do you know, it's very easy. I like to use the nicking your television analogy here, right? So I reckon that the vast majority of British people, if they walked past a house with the front door open and all the lights were out and they didn't think someone was at home, I think the vast majority of people would put their heads to the front door and go, "Cooey, anyone there?" And then sort of, you know, maybe close the front door because they might be worried about someone burgling them. But there's always got to be someone who sees that front door open, the lights off, and goes, "Righto, lads, here we go. We can get some stash." And is going to go in there and clean the place out, right? So you just don't, that's why you have a lock on your front door, because you don't know if every single human being walking down your street that day, whether one of them's going to be a burglar or not. So it's very similar to women's safety. You don't just go, well, all men are lovely, all human beings are fantastic. Clearly, if they're trans, they've got to be beatified and perfect. You can't say anything about that. There will be people, look, at the end of the day, if Jimmy Savile was roaming the planet still, I have no doubt he'd be one of the first people putting on a frock and going down the blimmin' girls' changing rooms. That's what I'm talking about. There are awful people on this planet, and sadly, we have to make rules to make sure that people are protected, particularly the most vulnerable, which very often happens to be women and girls. So why is it that we are used as a statistic? Huh? You know, oh, we got the data now. Great. Well, do you know what that data is? That data is real people. And that data and those real people and what they have suffered has been used by you politicians, you campaigners, as some sort of human shield against your own blimmin' ego, against your own wanting to protect your career, against your own weakness at not being able to stand up and voice what is right. You're actually using people as human shields to defend yourself when you wait for their data, when it's altogether very clear. Thank goodness I got that off my chest, eh? Right, we're going to take a short break now. Ooh, yeah, the next one's going to get me fired up again because there's a council that's cancelled Christmas. Brilliant. How festive is that? All right, then, go get another drink if I were you, because things are about to get even more spicy. Spicier than mulled wine. See you in a bit.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Christmas has been cancelled. That's right. Involves a bit too much Jesus, doesn't it? Let's be fair. All that baby in a manger. Very triggering. That peace and goodwill. Harking heralds, angels singing, little guiding stars, three wise kings. From all corners, remember? Oh, yeah. Don't you worry, there was DEI in that Bible. No, we can't have any of that, can we? We can't have Christmas in this day and age because it's all too, I don't know, Western. It's all too us, yeah? It's not very inviting. I mean, we all know that there were no Muslims in the Nativity, were there? Because Islam wasn't invented till about 1,000 years later. That seems to be the mad idea that's spreading across the United Kingdom at the moment with our evergreen trees and our holiday jumpers and our festive menus. It's Christmas, the celebration, the feast of Christ. And we celebrate it because, you know, when we married up the Christian calendar and the old pagan calendar, we go, right, this is the day that Jesus was born. And that's why we celebrate it. That's where it comes from, by the way. You can't take the Jesus bit out. Well, no, try as they may, they will do so. Now, let's talk about Portsmouth City Council, because some council Scrooges have ordered residents to take down their Christmas decorations, not because it's the Jesus stuff, no. You know what, it's that time of year, Christmas time, good old elves and all that. Yeah. The tinsel has to come down because of elf and safety. Let's speak now to George Madrick, who is the reform leader of Portsmouth City Council, which is exactly where all this Scroogery is taking place. George, what's going on? Why can't they have their lights? Why can't they have their, you know, inflatable snowman?
Madness. Great intro, Alex. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, absolute madness. That's what's going on. They're using a small government rule in relation to Section 41 to basically threaten residents, multiple residents. I think we've got a couple of hundred that have been received letters where they have said that either take down your Christmas wreath off your door or you're going to be fined. Equally, they're going to remove them and charge people for removing them as well. And they're saying that it's health and safety and it's a fire hazard, which is absolutely mind-blowingly stupid in my opinion.
Now, let me ask you something, because this is something a lot of people listening are probably going to want to know, because I don't get it, and so perhaps you can explain. This is Portsmouth Council, and they have used some sort of little-known bit of legislation to make people not decorate their homes, but who is they? Because you run that council. You're the leader, right, of reform.
I'm the leader of reform, but it's a Lib Dem run council.
So is it the Lib Dems, the councillors who are being the Scrooges here, or is it some sort of, you know, block of apparatchiks?
Well, at the end of the day, all councils are governed by the councillors, by the administration. So the Liberal Democrats could certainly put a stop to it. I mean, the Portsmouth City Council, they say they have a zero tolerance policy on this Section 41. And only 5 months ago, they asked all the residents to remove all their doormats from the floor, just in case firemen tripped up if there was a fire. So this is the same rule they're using, which still applies. But it's just silly. They could use their discretion. At the end of the day, it's Christmas. And I'm going to say Christmas, not the festive season. It's Christmas. And why shouldn't it be celebrated? And let's be honest, a small wreath outside on a door is not really going to cause a hazard, is it?
Who's come up with this? Is it sort of like some moron called Dave who's like hasn't got a life, who sits there at a computer and wants to sort of make his pay packet mean something? Is he sort of part of the council civil service, or is this actually a political directive? Who? I'm trying to understand who they is.
Yeah, so the law comes from the government. Fundamentally, the law comes from the government, and it's up to the councils to then enact that law how they see fit. There is discretion. So, yes, in theory, the council are following the law, but there is discretion on that law for risk factors. So, yes, this is, when I say they, this is not only a governmental decision, but from a local level, this is a local decision. Otherwise, you'd be hearing this story from every city in the country, right? And you're not. So that means that other cities have used their discretion not to enforce this, whereas our council, well, we want to charge you a fine for putting up a Christmas wreath.
Is this therefore potentially a little political opportunity to make a bit of extra festive dough, you know, to sort of plug some black holes?
That's very cynical, but you know, there's got to be a reason for this craziness, right? Because it just is not, it's not sensible in any way, shape or form. And it's just going to annoy people. Of course it's going to annoy people. It's such a foolish, silly thing to do. And I don't know what benefit. I honestly can't think of a single benefit or a single gain they get from enforcing such a silly rule. I really can't fathom it.
And George, what are you going to do about this? Got a plan?
Well, it's health and safety gone mad, isn't it? I mean, we've already put a letter in to complain to the director of the department. They have wrote back basically saying health and safety, health and safety, health and safety, and blame the fire authority, saying it's the fire authority that saying it's a fire hazard. But look, we'll do what we can and we'll raise the questions. But, you know, they're making the decisions, the Lib Dems, and it looks like that they're going to follow through with the removal of these wreaths.
Perhaps where people have had the sort of raise the flag protest about people who have been rather unpleasant about our national standard. Perhaps you could have like raise the wreath and you know, equip people with a load of festive stuff that might be fire compliant. I don't know, something sprayed with inflammable gunk so it can be hung up in full compliance with Section 42. George, thank you ever so much. George Madgwick there, leader of the Reform Group on Portsmouth City Council, talking about the Scroogery going on there. Some messages before we go to break, because I like the fact that you're starting to participate in my game of peerages. That's a good game, isn't it? From Kaz, I think you'll agree, Alex, a well-deserved peerage, this is very good, is well overdue for the magnificent Maggie Oliver. I actually put a little lump in my throat reading that, because I actually think that would be really brilliant, actually. Very emblematic. That would be a very, very good choice. Alan in Northampton says he'd like to see in the House of Lords all of the talk team. That would liven the place up. Oh yeah, they wouldn't be allowed to nap under my watch, would they? All those old ones, all those old coves who've like served their time, put out to pasture, enjoying the subsidised tea and biscuits, going in, getting their 300 quid and basically having a snooze. Not if we were there. Although I think I've got better use of my time than being in that second chamber right now. I like this one, Mark in Coventry. Make Rafe Hadel-Mancu a Lord. He's so knowledgeable, so wise, the kind of sensible person we need in the Lords. All these brilliant ideas. Someone else has said Charlie Mullins. Imagine him in that house. So energetic as always. That is Scott from Fife. He says, take care and Merry Christmas. Charlie Mullins. It's a bit like having, you know, back in the day when with fabricants in the Commons, you could see that hair from a mile off, could see that hair from outer space. Quite a good idea. Let's get Mullins in there. There you go. Keep your thoughts coming in. If you could decide on peerages, who would you give a peerage to? Who would you like to see in the House of Lords? 03444 1000 to WhatsApp me. Leave me a voice note. 8722 if you want to send a text, like talk before your message. And let me have a little flick through my run order in the next hour. We will be taking calls, so if you'd like to register your interest, hopefully I might be able to squeeze some in. 03444 1000. OK, we're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, it is time for the sport.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker
the French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now, I must admit, as much as I love Dean Scoggins, and he knows I love him, he knows I kiss the ground that he walks on. Normally when he comes in here with his sports offer, it's all about football, and I think, OK, I'm just going to let him go for it. Oh! But no, we're going to kick off with some darts, aren't we? Tell me more, Mr. Scoggins.
It's Christmas. The darts is here. So
yes.
game on. We start tomorrow at Ali Pali, and obviously world champion Luke Littler is the name on everyone's lips. And this year it's £1 million first prize.
Oh, that kid can get a lot of takeaway with that, can't he? Good man.
Absolutely, yeah. So the runner-up gets 400 grand, which means the winner on January the 3rd will throw a dart worth £600,000 if he lands that dart. So yeah, it's expanded this year. 20 days of everyone getting very merry at Ali Pali, and then obviously that bumper payday. But Littler is fantastic talker now. You know, obviously very young lad, burst onto the scene, but now he's got used to the media, the limelight and everything. And he's spoken to us today about talking about no one will get in his head. So obviously this year, all around the dart circuit, everyone's tried everything to try and unsettle him and beat him. But
is it going to be a showdown between Cool Hand and the Nuke?
Well, yeah, Luke Humphries has got his MBE today. So he got his MBE, which is great. But yeah, they are the number 1 and number 2 in the world. So if they beat everyone in their way, they will meet in the final. But it's such a big tournament this year, so there's a long way to go before that. But yeah, we love the darts.
We love the darts. And can I just say, might there be a bit of a rival at the top when they see what Mr. Scoggins can do? Because my understanding is you're chucking a few darts down at Ali Pali.
They will definitely won't have a rival, but I have been very kindly invited to throw 9 darts on the stage on Tuesday before the afternoon session. So
that is so cool.
Yeah, as long as I hit the board, it's cool.
But what I want to know is, are you getting the full sort of, the music, the name, the intro?
Walk on girls, the full walk on music, the announcement to stage, shirt, everything. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So what is your darts name?
Well, so as you know, I present a tactics show, which I plug every time I come on here.
There you go.
So they've dubbed me the Titan of Tactics as the nickname.
Titan of Tactics.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, what's your music?
I'm having the Libertines, Don't Look Back into the Sun.
Well, that would help, actually, if you're throwing darts. You want to preserve your corneal integrity, you want to shoot. That is so much fun. Have you been to Ali Pali before?
I have. I go every year.
Oh, my God, I've never been.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
You could soon become my best mate, Dean, because I see Formula 1 tickets, going to the darts.
But the darts is now the hardest ticket in town, but next year they're moving it into a bigger arena. So
did you go in fancy dress?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't been in fancy dress.
Scogs, mate, come on. You've got to go as like a Mario brother or like a giant turnip or something. That's like what it's all about. I love the fact that, people go you just see them, there's darts going on in the distance and everyone's just like absolutely tanking it like they're at a stag do.
And they
have
no idea what's going on the stage at the time. But we love it in the sun. So we've got a free darts pull out tomorrow in the paper, which includes a wall chart as well, and we'll be blogging it every day. You won't miss a dart in the sun. It's fantastic.
Do you know what? I'm going to get me that wall chart and I'm going to invest myself in those darts. I love the darts. It is so blimmin' British, and I love the fact that it's the 2 Lukes always.
We don't watch Christmas films in our house. We watch the darts over Christmas.
Dang! I'm doing Christmas for you, Skogster. Just invited myself over. Can my parents come and my neighbour Mia?
Yeah,
Brilliant.
in the bar throwing
All right.
darts.
Excellent. Now, I've got very excited about the darts. I'm probably not going to get as excited about the footballer, but there'll be a football, all of it. But there's definitely people listening who are up for a bit of a footy action. So tell me what is coming to pass.
Yeah, even more in the Mo Salah row. So Steven Gerrard, the Liverpool legend, ex-captain, has now weighed in. So Mo Salah spoke out after being dropped and said he was thrown under the bus by Liverpool and then was left out of their win last night into Milan. So now Steven Gerrard has weighed in, says that Virgil van Dijk, who's the current captain, should act as the peacemaker. Yeah, great name, yeah. But even as we're speaking, so now the Saudi Pro League, obviously billions of pounds to spend, want Mo Salah to come, and the head of the Saudi Pro League, Omar Mughabel, has just said, yes, we are targeting Mo Salah. So that story just keeps on running. So when we get to the January transfer window, very, very likely that there's going to be lots of interest in Mo Salah. But Liverpool fans split straight down the middle of, are you team Mo or are you team Slot at the moment?
So do people sort of think that those who are team Slot think that Mo might be having a bit of a childish
shouldn't have spoken out. If you dropped, out of form. But then those in the Salah camp are very much, he's a legend, top scorer for 8 consecutive seasons. He shouldn't be left out, and that they should change the tactics to suit him, not the other way around.
But he's about to go off anyway for the African Cup of Nations,
He's about to go to the African Cup of Nations. So this weekend against Brighton, he may get to wave goodbye, and possibly for the last time. If they then sell him in January, he doesn't come back from the African Cup of Nations till the middle of January. So this could be his last appearance at Anfield on Saturday.
Right, there you go. I quite like the African Cup of Nations. It's good football, isn't it? Yeah, because I always say sports should involve a real risk of death or maiming, and the African Cup of Nations, there's definitely a bit of maiming involved, which is why I quite like it. Very physical, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
OK, right, and there's Champions League stuff going on tonight, apparently. What can people look forward to?
Yeah, massive night tonight, and the English clubs had mixed fortunes last night, but tonight, so Arsenal have won 5 out of 5. They go to Bruges. Newcastle have got Leverkusen, but the biggest tie of the night is Manchester City at Real Madrid. So Jude Bellingham and co against Erling Haaland and co. So
the one I've heard of, the one that looks like a Viking, the Viking one. Yes. Do you know what you've done again, because you are the Titan of tactics?
I've come up short, have I?
You have, yeah. Look at that. We've done our stories on the list. Yeah. We've got about a minute to fill. So I wonder what we're going to fill that with, old Titan of tactics. Yeah, Is there something you want to share with us?
One thing I did want to bring up, which I was going to cut short there. So Erling Haaland's been talking tonight about how he's old school when it comes to football, and he's refusing to wear gloves over the winter like all the other players because he says his dad tells him off.
That's because he's a Viking, my man.
Absolutely, he's a big, strong man.
He'll be chased out. Where does he come from originally?
Norway.
Exactly, Norwegians. That's why they've got that really good hand cream and stuff, because they're exposed to the elements.
And so it's a bit colder up there than it's even colder there than Manchester, isn't it? So.
Yeah, busy time of year in those parts as well. They've got to do all their wrapping and get their sleighs and their reindeers ready. Anyway, look, guess what? We've got about 30 odd seconds for you to tell us where they can get a bit more slice of the Titan of tactics.
Absolutely, you can watch my tactics show on YouTube at the Sun's YouTube channel, and this week I've done Mo Salah. So are Liverpool better off with or without Mo Salah is the big topic of the week.
Bang on time. Thank you, Titan. Good luck at Ali Pali.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see some footage. Don't you go anywhere, because I'm back just after this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
All right, welcome back. It's 2 hours done. One left to go. Well, maybe it's just one if you've only just tuned in. Hello, welcome aboard if that is you. We've missed you. What took you so long? That's okay. I know commutes are like that sometimes, aren't they? But I'm glad you're like settled in now. You need some new slippers for Christmas. Come on. Right. Okay. Anyway, welcome aboard if that is you and you've only just joined us. Thank you if you've been tuned in for the first 2 hours of the show. And if you're like, oh, I might have missed some good stuff, I'll tell you what, you have. Oh, I've ranted a bit tonight, haven't I? The old Alex machine has been cranked up and it's been blurting out all sorts of opinions. And if you're like, I wonder what they were, then don't you worry. You can go onto YouTube and watch the show back from the beginning at any point. Right? Today, tomorrow, whatever. Sit in the bath, I'll keep you company. That's right. Or you can go on to the brilliant Talk app and get it there instead. All the presenters, all the shows, all the content and the sport, a lot of it. I hope that they do Talk Sport. Oh, no, it's Sun, isn't it? I'm getting all my people, all my cousins in the building mixed up. Someone somewhere has got to film Dean Scoggins throwing those darts because I, for one, want to see it. Anyway, let's talk about things we probably don't want to see, which is anything that the government announces, quite frankly. Hey, look at this, actually. I was just looking at, out the corner of my eyes, looking at some messages before we moved on to the next section. And people are sending in all their ideas about people who should be in the Lords. Donald Trump. Imagine that, that'd be mad. Nigel Evans, he used to be the Speaker. I know, you kind of wonder with people like that why they aren't in the Lords. That would make sense, wouldn't it? And then Mandy from Worcester says, Lord Peter Blexley. Well, shall we find out what he thinks about that? Because he's up next. Hi, Peter.
Good evening, and I'm deeply flattered. Thank you, Mandy.
Would you like to be a peer of the realm? I could see you actually doing that.
Would you imagine prowling the corridors of power with all those poshes going, who's that wick? Who let him in here? And I say, actually, I'm Lord Blexley of Bexley, and I deserve to be here.
Lord Blexley of Bexley! Oh my gosh, we need that in life. Please, gods of Christmas, listen to me. Baby Jesus, I want it. I am a Christian, by the way, so I'm not offending anyone but myself during that. Now let's talk about Lord Blexley of Bexley. Brilliant. Let's talk about this idea that police forces could be merged into 12 regional forces, and that actually, apparently there's 43 right now, mix them up into 12 bumper forces, and Shabana Mahmood thinks this will give a sense of continuity in policing. Some might argue, actually, that could cut out a lot of bureaucracy and waste. Or is it a terrible idea? What do you reckon?
Well, there has been a precedent set here because in 2013, the 8 police forces of Scotland merged together to become, rather unimaginatively, Police Scotland. And they've not been without their teeth in troubles in the early days and their issues since. But there are some positives that can be gained here. Imagine the purchasing power that, say, 12 major forces would have in terms of uniforms, drones, vehicles, helicopters, computers. The list goes on and on and on. That purchasing power would be huge and would be able to drive down costs. Now, if they made some savings, would they do what the entire nation wants, which is to put police officers in boots or shoes out on the streets, patrolling those streets, keeping people safe, sorting out the hooligans, the antisocial behaviour yobbos, quelling the epidemic of shoplifting, knife crime and the such like, because that's what the police want. If this merger were to happen and we saw more officers on the street being proactive, I'd be a fan.
Is there also a possibility that this could also work? Because you're talking about purchasing power, sharing information. We know that a lot of crimes happens cross-border. I mean, where I live, I was reading the copy here, and it says that, you know, forces that could potentially merge might be something like Gloucestershire and Wiltshire. Well, I live on the border of those two counties, and you kind of think, oh, that could make sense, actually, because all of a sudden, if someone's, I don't know, being a ne'er-do-well, dumping rubbish, dealing drugs, burying bodies, it could potentially happen in both counties. And then also, when it comes to purchasing power, if we're going to get some really cool facial recognition technology to get the scumbags who are nicking things in shops, well, like you said, they could combine their powers and get more done. I mean, I'm beginning to think this might be good news.
I think it could be. My area of London, which is an outer suburb, is targeted frequently for car crimes. People like to steal vehicles here because when they cross the border, which is only like a couple of miles down the road into Kent police territory, the radios are not compatible. They don't speak to each other. They're not on the same system. So if those kind of things could be ironed out, that would be to the benefit of the police, the benefit of the public, and to the detriment of criminals. So I'd be a fan for that. And, of course, greater sharing of information, because, as you pointed out, criminals cross borders between county from county to city to town to hamlet. They travel everywhere, wherever they think they can carry out their dirty deeds and make a few quid. So I think there are a lot of benefits to be had.
I think you could be right about this. I'm beginning to concern myself that they put somewhat funny in my tea, because I found myself praising the Labour Party and thinking they'd come up with a good idea and actually talking about something that could be good news. Wow, it's a Christmas miracle.
Yes, well, that's maturity, isn't it? That shows somebody who's not completely blindsided to one political opinion. If somebody from the other side comes up with an idea that has some merit, it's only right that we praise it if we think it's going to work. We'll have to wait and see, of course. And I think with only 3 years left of this government, probably, will they have time to enact it, get it through Parliament and practically reshape the police forces? We'll have to wait and see.
Do you know, maybe I've been influenced by the festive spirit of the backdrop, because I noticed earlier, I hadn't seen it before. Dean Scoggins came in and went like, oh, you look very festive. And I turned around and I was like, oh, yeah, look at that. It's snowing. I got Christmas trees. Because I don't often look what goes on behind me, I noticed something weird here. So you got Battersea Power Station next to the Shard. OK, not really technically close to each other, but, you know, Thameside things, both on the south bank of the Thames. That makes sense. Then over here you got Tower Bridge. I suppose that sort of makes sense as well. OK, nice London scene. And then I spotted the Angel of the North over there. What are you doing there? Anyway, I love the Angel of the North, but you just don't expect to see it by the River Thames. Sorry, I digress. I just haven't seen it before. Let's talk. All right, OK, so this is also something. Yes, Mahmood. Yes, my girl. Because this is also something I totally agree with, which is the idea that the ethnicity of all offenders should be recorded and published by the police. That's in the wake of the grooming gang scandal. The Home Secretary said full disclosure of the ethnicity of suspects was the best way to tackle conspiracy theories. Announcing its terms of reference is the grooming gang inquiry. That thing's been dragging on. It's not going anywhere. She said it'll explicitly consider ethnicity, religious and cultural background, which we know that Baroness Casey had insisted that it did. But this finally seems like a bit of common sense, doesn't it?
It certainly does. And it's about time too. We have an absolute right to know who, from what ethnicity, from what culture, from what background is committing what crime. It is only right and proper that we know that. And the police should need to know that so that they can target their resources accordingly. If one particular nation or people or community are committing crimes at a far more disproportionate level than another, then they can focus their resources accordingly. But of course, will they? You mentioned the grooming gang scandal. We know that that was allowed to go on for so many years in so many places due to the cowardice of senior police officers who were kind of like, oh, there's nothing to see here, because they were afraid of upsetting the Muslim Pakistani minority. That they were afraid of. They were afraid of civil unrest. And so, of course, young, white, British girls were victimised, raped and held captive, kidnapped, trafficked, plied with drugs, the absolutely abominable crimes committed against them. And so much of that was born out of the fact or perpetuated by the cowardice of social workers and senior police officers.
Now, I do have some reservations with this because it sounds good in principle, but it has to be done correctly. And so the first thing is they talk about this being transparency. Ms Mahmood told MPs, it is my view that we should collect ethnicity data for all offences. OK, so is that going to be publicly available? Because you can collect data as much as you like. Whether the public have access to it is a different issue. But also, she sort of says transparency would stop people thinking that some communities are allowed to get away with certain types of behaviour. But then she does counter it by saying, that the state does not wish to know the full facts of any case. Because the thing is, you sort of wonder, actually, that it's all very well making pledges to collect data. If the data proves to be extremely problematic, I wonder if those people in authority will have the gumption to A, publish it, B, acknowledge it, and B, strategise on the basis of it.
That is why it needs to be cemented in law. Police must be compelled to record the ethnicity of offenders and publish that. It needs to be in law, or else some flaky, fluffy, woke police leader who doesn't want to upset the apple cart will not do it. And we've already seen elements of this because the College of Policing only issued advice. They didn't issue instructions. So they bottled it. And of course, if you give a woke senior police officer any chance to not do something and look the other way and not get involved in telling the truth to the public because it doesn't suit their liberal agenda, then they will. So they must be compelled to do this by law.
Let's have a little look at Shabana Mahmood talking specifically about the grooming gang inquiry.
The inquiry is focused specifically on child sexual abuse committed by grooming gangs. It will consider explicitly the background of offenders, including their ethnicity and religion, and whether the authorities failed to properly investigate what happened out of a misplaced desire to protect community cohesion. The inquiry will act without fear or favour, identifying individual, institutional and systemic failure.
I'm beginning to like that, Shabana, if I'm honest with you, Peter. Now, something else which I think is important is something that's been said by Kemi Badenoch, which is that mosques have to be compelled to cooperate and to give evidence. She said a statutory probe must follow the facts, whether it's mosques or whether it's state bodies, both of them. And then Chris Phillips has demanded that foreign grooming gang members are kicked out of Britain. Those who are dual nationals must lose their citizenship. Again, I think very important points because, you know, the one thing I was talking with Dr. Akib Ehsan about this earlier, and I said the one thing that would do the Muslims in Britain the world of good is if there were more voices who stood up and said, we're on your side. We will do what we can to help. We understand that this is going on in certain parts of our communities and we're not going to stand for it. That would go a long way. But absolutely, we can't allow certain communities to sort of self-administer community protection, shield people, get away with shielding people if they know bad things have been happening.
Yeah, unfortunately, we do not hear enough Muslim condemnatory voices on social media. What you do tend to get is the Islamist imams who are spouting their hate and their bilge and their violence. They tend to get a lot of the airtime on social media and not the voices of decent, upstanding, tax-paying, law-abiding Muslims. We want to hear more from them. We want to see them being very, very prominent. We want Muslim communities turning over child rapists to the authorities. We want them grassing them up. We want to believe that they are on our side. And let's face it, there's more Muslims in the UK now than people who live in Wales. So we do need to hear those voices. It is absolutely right. And for community cohesion, if we're going to move forward peacefully, those voices have to be heard. It's time for those people to step up to the plate.
Totally agree. Do you know, I always think, because it's flooding again in the southwest, as always, lots of rain, storm, bram this time. It's like, hey, when am I going to have to build an ark? You know, coming from Gloucestershire, we're blighted with water everywhere. Dr. Foster went to Gloucester, all of that. And I often think that when we've had flooding in times past, you've got, is it Khalsa Aid, the Sikhs basically in their high-vis jackets who go and like literally throw sandbags everywhere. They're brilliant. Khalsa Aid, is it? I love that. I mean, it's such a beautiful symbol of proper integration of communities getting together. And I just wish we saw more of that from other communities. It'd do us the world of good. Lord Peter Blexley of Bexley, thank you ever so much, sir. Right, we're going to take... Oh, no, before we take a break, actually, there is a bit of breaking news. Because there was plans to potentially be a 5-day doctor strike next week, which should have been absolutely catastrophic just ahead of Christmas. It's a time of year where we know we've got some sort of nuclear flu circulating. Not only that, the cold always makes people get into trouble, slipping and sliding on pavements, electrocuting themselves with their Christmas lights, having too many sherries, and then getting into a bit of a pickle. As a result, it's the time of year where there really is a lot of business going on in A&E, not that there isn't any other day of the year. So a 5-day walkout starting on Wednesday next week would have been absolutely catastrophic. Well, it looks as though that could potentially be averted because the government have stepped in. They've made an offer to the British Medical Association that they hope that they will accept. Now, before you go, not again, they're giving them more money, why? Actually, they're not. It doesn't include any promises of extra pay. In fact, Health Secretary Wes Streeting has been adamant he will not negotiate on that, given that they've already had pay rises of nearly 30% over the last 3 years. My gosh, the Labour Party being fairly decent in some parts at the moment. Good on them. But what it will include is a rapid expansion of specialist training posts. That's really important. Train up our own. Give them opportunities. Don't keep importing people from abroad. Make sure our own young men and women who have spent a lot of time in medical schools are given the opportunities first, for crying out loud. Good move, Wes. Also, that they will cover out-of-pocket expenses such as exam fees. That is very reasonable. Do you know, a very good friend of mine was training to be a surgeon, and you're constantly having to take exams, as you should have to if literally life is under your hand and you're holding all sorts of, you know, sharp things, scalpels, cutting open rib cages. You want to make sure those people are constantly examined as to their aptitude and their ability. So why should they pay for those things themselves? That, to me, also makes sense. Blimmin' heck, you haven't tuned into LBC, don't you worry. Although I do have to say, well done, Wes, and well done, Shabana. Oh, my dear Lord, something's getting very strange. Let's see if we can settle things down again, because after the break, we're going to be joined by the Deputy Head of News at The Sun, the fantastic Will Barker, to go over tomorrow's headlines. That's after this.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sorry, we're just having a bit of a joke in here. Sorry about that. Hello, welcome back. Ever professional, aren't we, Mr. Barker? We're just having a bit of a gossip. Because basically that's what news is, isn't it?
Absolutely.
To be honest, it's just you're being paid to gossip.
Yeah.
So let's get on with it. Let's actually change gear in reverse, take the laughter out of the situation, because this isn't a laughing matter at all, is it? About
it's a properly shocking story. I mean, it sort of led the way at the start of the week. This awful rape trial in the Midlands. Two Afghan migrants got jailed for the rape of a 15-year-old. We're getting so many of them at the moment. They're literally just lining up in the news queues. And these pair, we've now discovered, because they're only 17, they get to go to a youth offenders institute rather than a staunch hard-line jail. And in this youth offenders institute, they get to have film nights, craft sessions. They can even play Jenga if they like, which is just incredible, really.
So they get their own cells, their own showers, they've got phones, desks, laptops, TV, DVD player. Oh, may as well just roll out some sort of massage and yoga lessons. They'll probably get that as well. Exactly. I mean, it's... You know, like you said, this stuff is happening all the time now. And the people like me were screaming that this was going to happen, that it was happening for years and being made to feel like a monster. But there was a couple of these, I don't know if it's the same guys, but one of them's basically tooled around all over Europe in like designer swagger gear, big gold watch, lots of selfie photos. I'm going to say something, Will. You might sort of want to hide under the desk and pretend you didn't hear it. But I put it on X today. I think it's something that we've got to get to grips with as a country, which is, without doubt, there are young men in the Middle East and in the Maghreb, and they live in a society where there is no sexual freedom. They cannot see a woman's ankle, let alone go on a date, hold hands, snog in the back row of the cinema. You know, that's for the birds. They don't get to do that. And yet they'll all have one of these. They'll all be able to probably access adult content, things on Instagram even. So they have a notion of what Western girls are like. And we know as well that people traffickers on TikTok use videos of girls on a night out to say, oh, you want to come to Britain? Some of these young men are probably coming to this country for the express reason that they want to.
Yeah, I mean, we've had grooming gang figures out again today, and they're terrible as well. And there clearly is, we have got a real issue in the country that we need to tackle in some kind of way, because we keep seeing all these figures, we keep having all these stories, and they keep over and over again every day at the moment. Again,
I always get upset when we have to rely on figures, when common sense would tell you if a man's coming from a very misogynistic culture, he's not going to suddenly become a Me Too movement, you know, mouthpiece the minute he hits Dover. But no, we've got to get the data first. Doesn't matter if those statistics are actual women. Right, let's move on, shall we? Meghan Markle. I love this story because,
this is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, she was like, I sent him an email and I assumed it didn't bounce. Oh, I was then, you know, phoning up all the different hospitals to find out which one he was in. And now she's apparently sent some sort of letter to her father. It's like, girl, you could easily find out where he was at and get on a plane and go see him.
I think they really struggled, you know.
Really?
We sort of bizarrely, we've sort of now been we've got a line of communication with them, let's say, and which we didn't have before for obvious reasons. We had
he didn't like you, did he?
Didn't like us at all. But we're kind of talking to him, and I think they were really struggling to get hold of him and work out where he was. And I think they're really miffed that the Daily Mail have got alongside him, and they feel like that the Mail are kind of using him, and meanwhile, he's out there desperately wanting to speak to his daughter and get in contact with her, whereas but she's now saying she's not going to go over, and she sent this letter instead.
I mean, yeah, it's like a letter's one thing, but I don't know, like your parents on a deathbed, if he is on a deathbed. To me, it's all very sad.
It is.
Actually.
It is really sad. It's a father and daughter, and you think maybe towards the end they could find a way through it or something when he's on death's door or potentially at death's door, but seemingly they can't get over it.
Here's a grim segue if ever you've heard one. Talking about death's door.
Yes. I've really picked the jolly stories today, haven't I?
Yeah, super spreader flu. We keep hearing this, that there's some sort of horrible flu that's about to hit, and this is a nasty, nasty flu.
Exactly. There's a flu. The figures are going to come out tomorrow. We're expecting record levels. I don't know what you're like in your offices, but our newsroom's been particularly badly hit. It's sort of Christmas party season. Everybody's going down. No, I'm fine. I've never had a day off sick, you know. I'm fine.
I had the worst flu at the start of this year that I got in America, and I've never been so ill for the whole year it got me.
Right.
Whole year. I had shingles twice off the back of it. I got vestibular neuritis, which I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. That is something. It's when the nerve connects, your eyes and your ears gets infected, and basically it's around the clock feeling like you're drunk and just stepping off the waltzers.
Right.
Like to the point that you want to throw up. You just want to, the only time, lie down, you got it. Walking, it was the most. I literally have had the worst health this year because of some monster flu, and I really never want that again. So I actually, in terms of this, flu worries me a lot more than COVID ever did, I've got to say.
That's the thing. I think we're so well versed because of what we went through with COVID. We're sort of now well prepped for these kind of things, and I think they're telling lots of people now to wear masks again. I think Birmingham, my town, is quite badly hit at the moment. There's lots of hospitals all going into lockdown over all this, and so we wait to see what happens tomorrow. But as I say, it's Christmas party season. So everybody's out socialising, and it's sort of going to get worse, I think, into next week.
Here it comes again, though, something quite contentious, which is the idea that kids, because they're super spreaders, 'tis true, they're all in those classrooms together, sharing their germs, little petri dishes of filth. But we know that, but there's a sort of suggestion from NHS bosses that they should get a vaccine. And it comes down to this idea that a vaccine doesn't necessarily stop you being the transporter of something, being the vessel of something. You might not get it badly, but you would still carry it and potentially spread it. That to me seems like a bit of controversy in all of this.
I think we now know what we should be doing really after post-COVID, but just be careful.
I would just say to anybody, if you're poorly, please just stay away from people. It shouldn't be about everyone else locking down. If you're poorly, just don't go, and don't be the valiant person who's like, oh, I feel terrible, I've come into the office. Go home. I don't want it. Go home, sit under your slanket, put on some daytime TV, live your best life, keep your germs to yourself. Seriously. I can think of one presenter who I absolutely love in our sort of stable of talent, who is always the valiant, don't come in. I won't name names. Now, I love this story. Tell me about what football fans are enjoying.
I don't know how many football burgers you've had over the days, but you don't really often think of them as great meat products. You kind of wonder what's probably gone into them. There might be some cow's eyelashes and all sorts of things.
Back in the day, it was donkey meat. Remember those good old days?
Yeah, they're highly not great. But in this new world we live in, the Premier League, the most successful league in the world, they're suddenly gone into fine dining. They've kicked out beef, and now venison is on the menu, and you can the various stadiums have now taken it up, and it's an idea as a sort of a kind of climate change type thing. I don't really understand it. Some sort of eco drive to stop eating
a
beef.
cow's fart. That's gonna, the planet's gonna burst into flames as a result. I hate that nonsense.
Yeah.
But it's interesting looking at some of these places that are, because they're saying they're going to switch to wild deer in an effort to cut carbon emissions. I'll tell you what it is. There's a lot of wild deer.
Yeah.
When you're out in the sticks like I am, there's blimmin' loads of them. You go down the Forest of Dean, there's more deer than people, and wild boar.
Well,
and so probably less expensive these days.
2 years ago, I was driving along in the Cotswolds, and one came out and bumped into me, took my car out.
Ooh, where were you?
Lay dead on the camping site somewhere or other. Lay dead on the side. Apparently, if I'd picked it up, I could have taken it home and had it for tea.
Wow.
That's
how big's your car? Must have something
big boot.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, if you're driving a sort of a Fiat Panda or something,
No, it wasn't
you
that,
tangle
no.
with a stag, you're in big trouble. But here we go, another one. Non-league club Forest Green Rovers has an entirely vegan policy. We all know who runs Forest Green Rovers.
Yes.
That's old Mr. Dale Vince.
Exactly.
It says Forest Green Rovers in the Cotswolds. Stroud, mate, Stroud.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. I don't know whether Stroud's technically the Cotswolds. I'm going to be a snob about this. But no, I mean, I quite like it. And it's a far healthier meat.
Yes.
And yeah, I think that's a great story. I like it.
Good.
All right, there you go. Bring on the venison. Feels quite festive as well, having venison.
Yeah.
Well, thank you ever so much.
And to you.
Lovely to see you again, my darling.
Cheers.
OK, we're going to be taking a short break now, but don't go anywhere because we have got a corker of a story for you. It's going to be coming out today exclusively at 7 p.m. It's going to be never seen before undercover footage from inside the world's most dangerous migrant camps in Calais. Gunfire being a nightly reality. We're going to be talking about that with the author of that excellent report, our international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. That's after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now, she is one of my favourite women on the planet because she is fearless, she is brave, she is very proactive, and she goes places where other journalists dare not tread. And she always brings incredible exclusive material, and she has done exactly the same again. She's knocking it out the park yet again. It's Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. Hi, Isabel.
Oh, what a lovely introduction. That makes me feel all warm and glowy.
It's true, though. It's
Just
true.
one thing.
Yeah.
It was not actually me that went undercover into the heart of the Calais and Dunkirk migrant jungles. I felt, Alex, and you're probably going to agree with me on this one, that I might stick out a little bit too much.
I know it wasn't you, because I was speaking to a young man called Nicholas last night, in fact. But and like I said, I don't think it'd be a great idea if beautiful, gorgeous, blonde-haired, stunning-looking you went to go lurk around in the migrant camps. I think that would probably be asking for trouble. But you have coordinated a team who have come up with incredible material. Tell us more.
So what's happened here is that we wanted to get to the truth of what is really going on in those migrant camps, as thousands of undocumented, mainly males, mainly young men, wait for their places on a boat to the UK. And that is very difficult to do because the police, the French police, don't want reporters in there. It's not a nice place to hang out anyway. It's very dangerous. But the French police, either because they don't want us to see what's going on, or because they're fearful for our safety, probably a bit of both, but mostly because they don't want us to see, are very obstructive to journalists operating openly. So to the best of my knowledge, no one has ever got really into the heart of these camps, and nobody has ever tried to live alongside the migrants, posing as a migrant themselves. And so I did this project working with a builder from Rochdale. That's his day job. I'm not sure he's going to be doing too much building in the future, because it turns out he is a brilliant undercover investigative journalist. And he spent 2 weeks living cheek by jowl, I mean, frankly, sharing a tent with some pretty unsavory characters. And I think what we've found, and all the while he was recording everything. So we've got hundreds and hundreds of photographs and video recordings and audio recordings of the type of people heading our way and the type of people who now control that whole area of northern France. Now, you might like to think that that was controlled properly by the French authorities, but from what we've observed, the people that have the upper hand along that whole coastline of northern France, so the bit of France that is nearest to the UK, are actually hardened criminals. And as you mentioned in the introduction, gunfire, the sound of semi-automatic weapons, is a norm in the camps of Calais and Dunkirk, particularly in Dunkirk. That's where we recorded it.
Let's actually have a little teaser, because, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a Talk exclusive, premiered at 7 o'clock tonight. I know you're not going to want to miss that, but let's have a little look.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning all around the clock to late at night, to the point where you know, on buses, on trains, through streets, all at every key point, the police, the French military police and the French police were, you know, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Just being there. So what on earth were they doing, Isabel?
I'll tell you what they were doing. They were doing less than going through the motions. So we've known for a long time the French police effectively turn a blind eye. I mean, the plenty of pictures we've seen before of the French police standing on beaches as migrants depart on boats. What is new about our revelations tonight is that the French police are not just standing by, they are actively herding migrants towards the UK. We have filmed them on buses, on trains, helping to transport migrants from the camps of Dunkirk to boat departure points. That is completely unacceptable. The French are taking hundreds of millions of pounds from the UK taxpayer, supposedly to help us stop the boats. It's not just that they're standing by because the French regulations say they can't get their little toes wet in the water. They are helping those migrants get to the UK. Why? Because every boatload of migrants that comes to the UK is a boatload less that are actually in northern France causing problems. So it suits the French police and the French authorities to wave them in our direction. But the problem is that just means that they keep on coming.
But also, it's even worse than that, because that means that the law enforcement in France is actively helping to fund international illegal networks. Because if you're helping people into boats and people are paying to be in those boats, that money is going to terror organizations. That's money going to people who harvest organs. That's money going to people who sell women on the black market into domestic slavery or into sex trafficking. And this is actually the French law enforcement. It might be indirectly, they might not be actually going up to these people, oh yeah, do you want us to help them? But that is essentially what that boils down to.
Well, I mean, I would say they are going up to them directly. They're not using the words, do you want us to help? But they are demonstrably helping. They are shepherding people onto free public transport across northern France, and they are with them every step of the way. That is an absolute scandal. And here's the other thing that I want people to think about tonight. What we learn in that jungle, which is what they call the biggest migrant camps, the jungle, I don't think the vast majority of people that are coming our way are paying anything like the reported fare for their passage to England. It's been widely reported, and perhaps this was the case in the past, that people were paying 1,500 quid. Well, let me tell you, from our evidence, most people in those encampments have barely more than the clothes that they are wearing. The idea that they can somehow build up £1,500, which is the equivalent of the entire average annual income of people in their countries of origin in some cases, that is totally fanciful. So if they're not paying in the way that you and I might understand, handing over a wad of cash, well, how is this being arranged then? Who exactly is funding them up front? And what exactly are those that are funding them getting in return? There are some very, very dark and serious questions here. And in particular about who is running these camps. These are highly, highly organized places. As Christian found out, you can't just rock up and pitch your tent there and then pay for a ticket on a boat. It doesn't work like that. The people who have come over have been brought to those camps by shadowy figures that they call travel agents. Who are those travel agents and what nationalities are they, and are they linked to rogue states? Certainly a lot of Russians in those camps. What roles are they playing? We answer some of those questions, but far from all of them. And it does raise actually the biggest question of all. If we, a little operation run by me and a builder from Rochdale, can uncover as much as we did in 2 weeks, what the hell are our authorities, never mind the French, what the hell are our authorities doing, not finding out more about what's really happening?
We've heard reports that even as recently as today, that some of these people are given free passage if they agree to carry A-class drugs on their person, essentially to smuggle drugs into the country. I've heard reports previously that these crossings might also be used to send caches of weapons into the country, drop a bag over the side into the sea, a little tracking device on it, and then it can be picked up, detected and collected later on. Indeed, I'm fairly certain that some of the people coming over will be wannabe terrorists, people who are trying to get into the country for nefarious reasons, or people who are being brought in here to work in the black market. And so what, like you said, what I've never understood is, on one side, there's a huge human tragedy involved in this, because all along the network of the trafficking routes, you've got people who are peeled off for organ harvesting, sex trafficking, really horrible things, which you're aiding and abetting if you don't shut this down. But also we know that it's got links to actual criminality that's then going to be perpetrated on British soil, connections to terror networks. It makes no sense to me why nobody in any position of authority is prepared to pull the lever and go, emergency, national crisis. That means we can now do something properly about this.
I couldn't agree with you more. The evidence of criminality on an industrial scale here, and a terrifying criminality, is so overwhelming that it's inexplicable that the powers that be in our own country, forget the French, don't say this stops tomorrow. You, the French, knock yourselves out. If you want a whole lawless kind of sub-state in your own country, well, we don't like it, but be our guest. A whole swathe of that coastline feels as if it's turning into Gaza. You know, this is almost like a rogue state within France. It is utterly lawless. And those camps are seething with drug dealers. They're seething with people who carry weapons. They are dangerous, dark places. And, you know, we could stop this tomorrow if we wanted. And I'm sure in coming days, Christian will be giving his thoughts about how simple it would be, you know, and it doesn't, you know, spoiler alert, this isn't just about sending in the Navy. There are many other ways this could be stopped really quickly. And yet we carry on in this extraordinary act of national self-harm and continue to allow these people to come. Now, of course, they're not all bad people. You know, one of the most interesting things about this project was that Christian built rapports with all sorts of different characters, and some of them were quite nice. You know, he actually enjoyed some moments in the camp cooking stew for some very nice Senegalese lads, insofar as he could tell they were nice, because here's the other thing. Almost nobody speaks more than a couple of words of English.
Yeah, Heidi, I was going to say, how on earth, there are a couple of things I wanted to know. How on earth did he sort of make himself seem like a migrant? This is a builder from Rochdale, for crying out loud. And also, what do we now know about the way these people live? Where do they go to the toilet? Where do they defecate? Sorry, it's a bit of a gross question.
You know
what do they eat?
Great questions, Alex. And I've written a long piece for tonight's Telegraph, hopefully tomorrow's Telegraph as well, answering many of those questions. There are no toilets around the camps. I mean, there's some pretty ramshackle makeshift toilets, but I'm afraid people just go to the loo anywhere, really. I mean, there's an absolute abandonment of any pride or dignity in that. In terms of eating, you know, here's another dimension to the stories. These do-gooding charities are propping up the whole thing. These camps could not function without the role of charities who are perpetuating the problem by continually handing out free stuff, free food, free drink, free tents, whatever it may be. And the other thing, crucially, they provide is free mobile phone charging services. Now, mobile phones are the way that all these migrants communicate with their handlers. Those are the people that get them on the boat. So if you've got no phone charging services, no electricity, no food, then you're very soon not going to have much of a camp there anymore. So I think the charities have very, very big questions to answer.
Talking about big questions to answer, surely the French have some big questions to answer. Have you got any sort of response from the French government?
I am so delighted to see your interview with the French presidential front runner. A great scoop there. And he has said that if he gets in, he will help us stop the boats. But that's still, if I'm not wrong, a couple of years away?
Yeah, 2027. And you know what they're like. They'll probably try and stop it from happening. But I live in hope.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's hope that happens. In terms of how did Christian try to blend in? You know, he's a white man. Let's be plain about this. You know, there are no Europeans in those camps. So he actually spent months preparing for this challenge. He spent a long time growing a straggly beard. He spent a long time practicing strange foreign accents. And, you know, since none of these people, very few of these people in the camps speak good English, they probably weren't actually noticing that his foreign accent wasn't, you know, didn't quite sound right. They weren't quite sure. He's got quite a heavy regional accent anyway. They probably didn't know what much to make of that. But the truth was he had to keep switching his story because, you know, if you're pretending that you're Kurdish, a lot of people assumed he was Kurdish because he looked a bit Kurdish once he got his long beard. The trouble is there are a lot of Kurds in the camp, so you don't really want to be a Kurd, a fake Kurd, if you're about to be in a group of Kurds. So he was variously Kurdish, Armenian, and eventually he actually dropped all of that and was just British and posed as a small-time British criminal who had to get back into the UK in an unusual fashion. And, you know, they didn't ask too many questions, but it was quite apparent to people in that jungle that he wasn't perhaps like anyone else. And that became very dangerous for him. And there was a point at which he had to leave for fear of being shot dead.
Blimey. Do you know, Isabel, like I said, you're one of the only journalists out there that does proper journalism, and it's a dying art form. We are so lucky to have you here on this channel. Absolutely fantastic work, and that is exclusive tonight at 7 o'clock. I cannot wait to watch it. I'm going to be tuning in. I can't wait to read your write-ups as well. Fantastic work, as ever. The brilliant Isabel Oakeshott, ladies and gentlemen.
Great journalism, and in stark contrast, here's Kevin O'Sullivan.
Hey, I love it. But no, what I mean, this is. I remember Isabel messaging me saying this is going to change our views.
Yeah.
Because do you remember we used to present together and everyone would roll their eyes?
Forget?
Because I banged it. Do you know what I kept banging on about? About the people trafficking. I said Wagner mercenaries. I kept saying Russia, Wagner mercenaries. And everyone was like, oh, here she goes, Wagner again. Isabel there saying, guess what? Camps were full of Russians. Of course, it is an act of grey zone warfare. I mean, all these things that it amazes me that, and as Isabel was saying, if we know about this and we just went undercover and spent 2 weeks in the camp, the UK authorities know all about this. They know the connections to Russia, they know the connections to terror organisations, they know the connections to black market organ harvesting, sex trafficking, drugs.
This is the giant waiting room, the airport terminal, if you like, for migrants who are about to take the last stage of their journey to Britain. And what Isabel and brilliant undercover operator Christian have established is this sheer size of this operation, the size of the jungle, the number of people there, the sophistication of it. I mean, you know, there are stores, there are shops, everything. And as you say, the charities Care for Calais and all those naive juvenile idiots going round giving them free things as if they even need it. So this is something that we should do something about, the British and the French should do something about it. I mean, now and again, I've seen this over the years, the French have gone in and bulldozed the jungle. But phoenix-like from the ashes, it always rises up again.
What I never understand is if the French said, right, turn back boats, it would. So we've seen this happen in Australia. When people think they can't get somewhere at all, they will stop doing it, which would stop these people then coming to France, because a lot of the pull factor of coming to France is to get to the UK. It makes no sense. Why on earth would the French want Calais to become, like, essentially what Isabel was saying, a bit like Gaza, with its sort of, you know, awful conditions, its lawlessness, its terrorists, its gangsters, and it just, I've never understood why the European Union are essentially complicit in all of this, because they won't turn around and take any necessary measures that would shut this down.
It's the French. It's the French. Now, your friend Jordan Bardella, heart in the right place, and he will, I'm sure, cooperate with us, and he'll think the situation will get better. But in the end, all due respect, he's French, that's France. They don't want to keep these migrants. Essentially, always the mission of France will be, bye-bye, enjoy England.
But then a lot of these people who were in Calais and Dover trying to get to Britain, if they didn't think they'd get to Britain, and my argument is they probably wouldn't go to France.
But look, Bardella, let's hope he gets in, will make the situation better. But in the end, if we, the idiot British, don't stop offering them free hotels, 50 quid a week, free lawyers, free dentists, free doctors, free everything for the rest of their lives, then they are never going to stop coming. It's down to us in the end. We've got to stop making Britain the land of plenty for these people.
I totally 100% agree. I mean, you know, I always say it's a bit like if someone from ever went, yo, Al, do you want to go down lands for a year? We'll give you a hotel by the beach. You ain't going to get much. You have the basic sort of, you know.
They can't believe their luck, these people.
The basic buffet is on offer. But you could go pull some pints, we won't tell anyone. I'd say Be nice,
well, of
wouldn't
course it would. This is the promised land for them. These people, this is what they're talking about in the jungle. Have you heard about what happens on the other side of that 21-mile stretch of water? It's incredible. They give you everything. So Bardella and a proper French government would help. But in the end, if we don't stop offering these people the earth when they come here, they're going to keep on coming, whatever Bardella or anybody does in France. It's down to us, and we have a government. While this is going on, while we're suffering these rapes, these terrible situations of these people coming over from foreign cultures, raping local women. What are our government saying today? We're going to ask them to try and loosen up some of the terms of the ECHR. It's pathetic.
So
Leave
ridiculous.
the damned ECHR.
Leave it.
Make our own sovereign decisions and stop giving these people the earth. When you talk about these charities, Care for Calais and all that lot going around offering them free stuff, the reason they have to do that is because the French give them the square root of damn all. They don't give them anything.
Oh, bin bag bivouacs, that's it. You know, survival of the fittest.
If they're lucky, they get a 10.
And you know, the French have often said about the UK, you've turned, you know, your country into an Eldorado for these people. It's ridiculous.
You know.
Now, before we hand over to you, we've had a few announcements about peerages. Sharon Davis.
Sharon Davis,
We'd love to hear
right.
it. We'd love to hear it. Old John Redwood, Sir John Redwood.
Good for John.
Sir John, we love it. Who would be your nomination?
For a
peerage?
Peerage. Peter Tatchell.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though he went all a bit...
No, because I don't agree with a lot of what he says.
He has campaigned all his life.
He's a sort of a bit of a hero of mine.
Mine's better.
Man of amazing conviction. Who else could I think of?
See, mine's better. Mine's
Tim
Tim
Martin.
Martin.
Yours is better. I'll be the judge of that. What is
Tim
yours?
Martin, Mr. Weatherspoons.
Okay.
Look what he's given to the world. I
don't
absolutely
mind that.
love it. I think it'd make a brilliant peer. And it'd be a bit reformy. Brendan O'Neill.
Lord O'Neill.
Oh, that'd be good, wouldn't it?
He would set that chamber
Or someone
on
else has
fire.
said Lord Blexley of Bexley.
Lord Bexley,
I know, isn't it good?
Like that. I tell you what, they could do a lot worse than Peter.
By the way, that's time up. Stay tuned.
Oh, yeah.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.